Hello, this is your host, Adam Graham, from Pretty Much the Present. And in this video, we'll be bringing you a compilation of old-time radio detective podcasts from 2010. The podcasts are appearing, for the most part, unedited, except for some extraneous or repetitive elements that are being removed because this is a compilation. As I said, these are old, so any websites or offers mentioned may not be valid at the time you're listening unless you find them on our website currently. Now, with that said, here is a week of old-time radio detective podcast. Welcome to the Great Detectives of Old Time Radio. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham. If you have a comment, email it to me, box13@greatdetectives.net. Cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. And follow us over on Twitter at Radio Detectives. Before we get started with today's episode, I do want to remind you to be sure and check out the entertainment book. A lot of great savings for local merchants on services that you'll need and use, such as dry cleaning, restaurants, and even more. It's a great opportunity. I encourage folks to go to entertainment.greatdetectives.net and check out the entertainment book in your area. All right, now we turn to the Thin Man as an actual radio series. Now, the Locke's Adventures, of course, starred the original actors. However, for the radio, could not get William Powell and Myrna Loy. I doubt it was seriously considered as an option, as they would have been incredibly expensive for radio. But The Thin Man was actually a fairly long-running series, with an estimated 351 episodes that were aired between 1941 and 1950. It began on NBC for 41 to 42, went to CBS for 43 to 44, and then back to NBC for a summer run in 1944, and then back to CBS from 44 to 47, and then NBC did a summer run in 1948, and then it went to Mutual in 48 and 49, and then in 1950 to ABC. Through all of these various versions, Claudia Morgan starred as Nora Charles. However, there were a wide variety of different actors playing Nick Charles. The role began out with Les Damon playing the role, and then when he got drafted, the role went to David Gothard, later to Les Tremaine, and then Les Damon came back towards the end of the CBS run, and then Les Tremaine came back. And then during the ABC run, Joseph Curtin of Mr. and Mrs. North played Nick Charles. So if you go to our website, we usually put the star on there. On Mondays, it's actually Claudia Morgan's face who will be there, because she's the one who was actually there the whole series. We have precious few episodes. Of the 351 episodes of The Thin Man radio show, we have a total of 8. 1 from 1942, 1 from 1943, 3 from 1944, 1 from 1945, and 2 from 1948. This episode will be the only 1942 episode. Like the majority of the Thin Man adventures that are in circulation, this one was a special done for Armed Forces Frontline Theater. The exact date is not known. However, it has been deduced that this was done sometime in 1942. So with that, let's get into the strange case of Professor Wainger.
It's the Frontline Theater. Today, bringing you a real thriller. The Strange Case of Professor Wainger, and as our extra special guest of honor, Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra. this is Ken Niles to welcome you once again to the Frontline Theater, brought to you men in the armed forces of the United Nations by the Special Service Division of the War Department. This is your theater, and every performance in it is presented especially for you, the men fighting with the United Nations on freedom's front line. Our play is an exciting story, The Strange Case of Professor Wainger. And because it's curtain time in the Frontline Theater and the play's the thing, let's get on with the show. Over New York, night has fallen, and in the apartment of Nick and Nora Charles, Irwin Harris, a friend, discusses his new job.
Like I say, Nick, here I got a steady job bodyguarding Professor Wainger. So you think everything will be perfect?
Well, isn't it?
Positively not.
Irwin, nothing's happened to the professor.
How could it when all the time he locks himself in a house and he never goes out?
Well, that should make your job a lot easier.
Sure, but then I'm taking money for nothing, which ain't ethical. So, I think I'll quit.
Oh, and do what?
Well, what's wrong with the stage?
Nothing, and let's try to keep it that way.
Did you ever hear me recite?
Irwin, I warn you, you'll be putting a severe strain on our friendship.
Once upon a midnight dreary, as I pondered weak and weary over many a volume of forgotten lore, suddenly there came a rapping.
Sound effects.
That wasn't me.
Come in. Oh, excuse me, Irwin. I better see who that is.
Oh, let me go, dear. I don't mind a bit. Just a second, I'm coming. Yes?
Oh, I beg your pardon. I didn't mean to disturb you. Just one more tack and I'll be through.
Say, what are you nailing there? Isn't that a funeral wreath?
Yes, indeed. One of Heikemeyer and Brothers' loveliest creations.
Oh.
A luscious spray of calla lilies surrounded by the purity and innocence of white camellias.
Excuse me, Mr. Judge.
Heikemeyer. A very common error.
Oh, yes. Well, I think you're making a mistake.
Madam, the firm of Heikemeyer and Brothers are not given to mistakes.
Well, there's no one dead here. At least I haven't seen a corpse in days.
Is this apartment 5B?
Mm-hmm.
Are you Mrs. Charles?
Why, yes.
There's no mistake. The wreath is for Nicholas Charles.
What was that name again?
Nicholas Charles.
Nick. Nicky!
Yes, sir?
Oh, thank heaven.
Want me, baby?
Uh-huh. Darling, this is Mr. Herkemeyer.
Oh, how do you do?
How do you do, sir? Believe me, my heart goes out to you in your hour of grief.
What's the matter with him?
He thinks you're dead.
Oh.
What?
Uh-huh. And he's got a wreath to prove it. See?
Oh, look, my little man, you're a trifle premature. I'm afraid you'll have to take that thing back with you.
Oh, I couldn't possibly. What would the customer say?
Well, I don't know. Who is he?
Oh, a noble soul. He paid cash.
What's his name?
He neglected to leave one. No, Mr. Charles. The wreath will have to stay.
I'm sorry, pal. I can't use it.
Well, what'll I do?
Couldn't you put it back in stock?
Madam, are you suggesting that I tamper with the records of Herkemeyer and Brother? Why, it would be sacrilegious.
Well, that's your problem, but get this thing out of here.
Mrs. Charles, I ask you to bear witness. I am not doing this of my own volition.
Uh-huh.
Attaboy.
If you should change your mind, sir.
Yes, I'll let you know.
You wouldn't reconsider it now.
No. Nothing personal, you understand, but I hope I never see you again.
You will, Mr. Charles. Mark my words, you will. Good day.
You ever see anything like him, darling?
Nicky, why should anyone send you a wreath?
Oh, I don't know, just a gag.
Well, it wasn't very funny.
What's the matter? Something wrong?
Someone just sent Nicky a wreath.
Oh, excuse me. Hello?
Hello, Mr. Charles?
Yes?
A short while ago, a funeral wreath was delivered to your door.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, if you're one of the Herkemeyers, I explained to your brother. It's all a mistake.
It was no mistake, Mr. Charles. I sent it.
You said... All right, pal. What do you want?
Listen, unless I've been misinformed, a young couple will be up to see you shortly. They'll have a request to make of you. Take my advice, Mr. Charles. Turn them down. Otherwise...
Otherwise what?
You'll find you were much too hasty in returning that wreath.
Well, that's Act One of The Strange Case of Professor Wainger. And now, during intermission, let's hear from today's special guest, Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra. We're certainly glad you accepted our invitation, Tommy, and we're turning the spotlight on you while you play one of those swell arrangements that have made you famous. The stage is yours, Tommy. Thank you, Tommy Dorsey. That was a swell tune. The men overseas will dust off the welcome mat for you anytime you and your boys want to play a return engagement. And now for Act Two of The Strange Case of Professor Wainger. 2 hours passed since Nick received the menacing phone call which explained the delivery of that wreath.
Oh, Nora, there's nothing to worry about. It's just a practical joke. Here, I'll prove it to you. Our anonymous friend warned me that a young couple would be here tonight. All right, it's almost 11. You see any sign of them?
What were you saying, dear?
Never mind.
That's what I thought. Good evening. Hello, won't you come in?
Oh, yes.
Oh, please sit down.
Oh, thanks. Say, isn't this a little unusual, or are you this hospitable to everyone who rings your bell? It's Southern blood.
Don't mind my husband. The truth of the matter is we were expecting you. You were? Oh, Nicky, this is... I'm Sylvia, and this is my brother, Gene.
How do you do? How do you do? I don't believe I caught the last name.
It's Wainger.
Wainger? Any relation to the famous scientist?
Yes, he's our uncle. As a matter of fact, that's why we're here. I understand that his bodyguard, Irwin Harris, is a very good friend of yours.
Yes?
Well, ever since Uncle escaped from Czechoslovakia, we've been trying to get in touch with him. So far, all we've gotten is a brush-off.
Well, don't blame Irwin for that. He has his orders. Dr. Wainger doesn't want to see anyone.
But that's ridiculous.
Is it?
Well, yes. You see, we know that Uncle lives under the constant fear that the Gestapo's after him. Surely that's no reason to refuse to see his only living relatives.
So you want me to arrange a meeting for you?
Oh, if you only would, Mr. Charles. I'm sure if Uncle would talk to me, I could convince him he has nothing to fear. When did you see your uncle last? Well, we never really saw him. You see, before my father came to this country, he quarreled with his brother. But now that Papa's dead, we decided we'd bury the hatchet.
Yes, that's right.
I don't suppose the fact that Dr. Wainger has a fortune in patent royalties in this country had anything to do with your decision?
Now, look, Mr. Charles, not even you can say that and get away with it.
Don't pay any attention to him, Mr. Wainger. He's awfully suspicious by nature. But he's got a nicer side, too. You'll find it out after he helps you.
Darling, aren't you being unduly optimistic?
You mean you won't?
If Dr. Wainger wants to see them, that's for him to decide.
Nicky, would you change your mind if I asked you to?
I'm sorry, dear. But beginning this week, I'm making it a practice not to interfere in things that don't concern me.
Well, I never thought I'd have to admit my husband could be frightened by a phone call.
Now, baby, you know that's not true.
Well, then prove it. Introduce them to Dr. Wainger.
Conniving woman. Are you really so set on this thing?
Yes, I am, Nick.
Now, bless your little heart. Then I think you'll have to do the honors.
Hello, Irwin.
Oh, it's you, Nora.
Uh-huh. Open up the door.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Say, wait a minute. Who are these people?
Oh, some friends of mine. I knew you wouldn't mind.
None of that. Now, you all here to scram. No, I'm surprised at you. You know the professor gave me strict orders.
It's all right, Irwin. I'm sure Dr. Wainger would be very happy to meet this couple. Now, be a sweet boy and get him.
I'm sorry, but the prof positively can't be disturbed. He's retired for the evening.
Irwin, I think you're fibbing. Now, won't you get him for me? Please.
No.
Pretty please. With sugar on it.
Oh, cut it out, Nora. You know I can't never refuse you nothing.
Isn't he a darling? You won't be long, will you?
Sit down. I'll be back in a minute.
Mrs. Charles, you're wonderful. I did manage that rather well, didn't I? Who said we needed Nick? I think you better let me do all the talking.
Oh, of course.
I never get a chance to when Nick's around. You know, sometimes...
Mrs. Charles?
Oh, there you are, Professor. How are you?
Just fine. Thanks for the asking. Mrs. Charles, you know I make it a rule never to see anyone.
Well, I thought you wouldn't mind making an exception in this case. Professor, I'd like you to meet your nephew, Gene.
My nephew?
And this is your niece, Sylvia. Hello, Uncle.
I never heard of you before. Wish you'd tell me who you are.
You're your brother Rudolph's children.
Rudolph's children?
Yes. I realize that doesn't prove anything, but I have papers
please, there's no point you're showing those to me. Papers mean nothing. They could be false.
Sure, it's easy. I once knew a guy who was so slick with a pen.
Irwin.
Sorry.
Professor, you can't turn them away like this. You can see with half an eye they're not imposters. How can you accuse them of being after your money?
Oh, you do not understand. Money means nothing to me, Mrs. Charles. I am a man of simple wants. Just ask to be left alone.
Oh, please, Uncle, you've got to let us stay. There's no other place we can go. We won't be in your way. What do you say, Professor? You've got to trust someone. Won't you let them stay?
You make it very hard for me to say no.
Oh, Uncle, darling.
It's all right, my dear.
Professor, I'm sure you'll never regret it.
Yeah, I hope so, Mrs. Charles. I sincerely hope so.
Well, darling, I trust you're satisfied with yourself.
Now that you've mentioned it, I am.
Brings back memories of your Girl Scout days, doesn't it? Who could that be at this hour?
Darling, there's a well-tested way to find out. Come in. Irwin.
Yeah, it's me. Nick, I gotta talk to you.
Okay, sit down.
You know what Nora went and done?
Yes, I heard all about it.
Well, you should never have done that, Nora. Well, why did you want to palm off a couple of phonies on a swell guy like the professor?
They're not phonies. Irwin, you shouldn't say that. You've only known them for an hour.
But that hour. If they're brother and sister, I'll eat your hat.
Well, what do you mean?
Look, Nick, I come from a big family, and we was as affectionate as the next. But you ought to see the way that Gene kissed Sylvia goodnight. That ain't the way we used to do it.
Could it have been an act to impress the professor?
If you ask me, I'd say they was saboteurs.
Irwin.
Well, it's sure a peculiar time for them to pop up.
Why?
Look, this is strictly sub rosy, but the professor's working on a submarine detective for the government. Now, I ask you, ain't it funny they should train up the night before he's supposed to run a big test for the big shots?
It might be a coincidence.
See? Even you're not so sure. Look, Nick, I should like very much for you to show up tomorrow night. Just to see there's no hanky-panky.
Well, I'll have to think it over.
Yeah, do that. But whatever you decide, I ain't taking no for an answer. Some turnout, ain't it, Nick?
Yes. What time does this experiment start?
Oh, any minute now. Everybody's here who counts.
Oh, there's Sylvia. Hello, Mrs. Charles. Can I get you anything? Oh, no, thanks. Where's your brother? I don't believe I've seen him tonight. Why, he's around somewhere, I guess.
Hey, come to think of it, I saw him go out about a half hour ago.
Yes, that's right. I think Uncle sent him out for something.
That's funny. Well, if he ain't back soon, he's going to miss the show. Hey, there, the professor's almost ready to start now.
The gentlemen and the ladies, you are all here tonight to see a demonstration of a submarine detector your government has asked me to work on. If my assistant will help me, we will proceed. Jean?
Oh, he isn't here, Uncle.
He isn't? Well, no matter. Erwin, will you lend a hand here, please?
Oh, gladly. What do you want me to do, Professor?
I pull down the switch marked A. Yes, that is the one right there.
Now?
Yes, please.
Right.
Now, gentlemen, you will notice how the needle fluctuates on this meter here. In just a moment, I will explain the purpose of that. Erwin, you throw in the next switch.
You betcha!
Look, the lights. They've gone out. Erwin, where are you?
Someone try those lights.
Erwin!
Don't move, Nora. Don't anybody move. Who's got a match?
Here you are, sir.
Oh,
Steady, darling.
it can't be. Erwin, isn't it?
Yes, I'm afraid so, baby. Everyone has been electrocuted.
Now remember this, Nick. My job is to get a confession. If you and Nora talk out of turn, I'll spin you out of here so fast you'll feel like a yo-yo.
We'll behave, Sergeant.
All right, Smitty. Open them up.
Hello, Sylvia. No, I didn't do it. I didn't kill Erwin.
Listen, Miss Ranger, whatever your name is, none of this phony sob stuff is going to get you anyplace. It's too bad your little plan didn't go off like you expected.
What do you mean?
You were after the professor, weren't you?
I tell you, we didn't mean to kill anyone.
Just meant to frighten him a little, eh? Where's your accomplice?
I don't know what you're talking about. Nick, you believe me, don't you?
Tell me something, Sylvia. You claimed that you and Jean were sister and brother.
We are.
You're lying. His name isn't even Wainger.
Well, mine is.
Then you're not related.
Yes, we are. We're married.
Yeah?
Sylvia, do you know where Jean is?
No. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. But don't you see, dear, if you don't, we can't help you. I don't want your help. Jean will get me out.
I just wish he'd try. Okay. Think it over, Toots. And when you do, I'll bet you'll come to the same conclusion I did. That swell husband of yours left you holding the bag.
Nicky, what are you thinking about?
About Erwin. He was a pretty swell guy.
Uh-huh. You think Sylvia and Jean did it?
Don't you?
It's all my fault. I never should have taken them up to the professor in the first place.
Well, I don't know, baby. Maybe it would have happened anyway.
Well, how could it?
Well, you're forgetting one thing, dear. That funeral wreath. Who sent it to me?
I did forget. Nick, do you think the man who sent it will make another attempt in the professor's life?
Oh, not so fast, sweetheart. Now you're assuming that Jean and Sylvia aren't guilty.
Darling, don't ask me why, but I'm positive they're not. I'll bet you anything you want that the man who threatened you on the phone is our murderer. There's only One fly in the ointment. How are we going to find out who he is?
How about your friend Herkemeyer?
The florist?
Uh-huh.
Oh, he wouldn't know. Remember you asked him.
Yes, but maybe if he were prodded, he might come up with a description. What do you say, Nora? You willing to try it?
Well, in a case like this, no sacrifice is too great. Step on it, darling. You better wait in the car, Nicky. I think I'll do better by myself.
Go ahead, beautiful. But don't let him swindle you into taking that wreath back.
Oh, don't worry. I'll try to make this quickly as possible, darling.
All right.
Yes, madam. Is there something I can show you?
Hello, Herky. Remember me?
I beg your pardon.
You delivered a wreath to my apartment last night.
Oh, of course. and you made me take it back.
Uh-huh. It was a mistake.
Oh, I know it.
You knew what?
He had a relapse. He died.
No, Mr. Herkemeyer. He didn't die.
He didn't?
No. See? He's waiting outside in the car.
You mean you haven't come for the wreath?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, Mrs. Charles, you simply must take it. You don't know how it's upset this entire organization. Why, my brothers and I...
Look, Mr. Herkemeyer, couldn't you give it to the man who bought it?
Well, I don't know his name.
Was he ever in here before?
No.
Could you describe him for me?
I'm not very good at games.
Well, suppose I prompted you. Wouldn't that help?
It might.
Well, was he tall or short?
Short, I think.
Oh, now, we're getting somewhere. Did he have any distinguishing marks?
Distinguishing marks?
Mm-hmm. I mean, did he limp or anything?
Oh, now that you mention it, I believe he did.
Did what?
Limp?
Are you sure?
Almost.
Well, what about the color of his hair? It wasn't red by any chance?
Yes. I think you're right.
And, of course, he had a cauliflower ear to match.
Let me think. Cauliflower ear. Mrs. Charles, where are you going?
Well, Herky, you're an awful disappointment.
Oh, Mrs. Charles, you're forgetting it. Oh, Mrs. Charles, please.
Darling, it looks as though we're stymied unless you come up with something brilliant.
Well, I'll have to pass, beautiful. All I can suggest is that you phone Sergeant Reynolds and have him post a guard around the professor's apartment. I'll take it. Hello?
Hello, Nick.
Yes, who's this?
It's Gene.
Gene, where are you?
Never mind, and don't try to trace this call or I'll hang right up.
Do you know they've locked up Sylvia?
Yes, that's why I phoned. You've got to get her out.
Well, that's impossible. Now, look, Gene, why don't you come up here and talk to me? I'd like to help you.
You expect me to swallow that yarn?
I mean it.
Well, all right. But don't try any funny stuff. If you tip off the cops, you won't live to regret it. You hear me?
Yes, I hear you. When will you be over?
Give me half an hour.
Okay.
Well, darling,
He's coming over.
that proves he didn't kill Irwin.
Does it?
Well, certainly. Otherwise, he'd never put in an appearance.
Maybe. Look, honey, will you get Sergeant Reynolds on the wire?
Nicky, you wouldn't do a thing like that.
I certainly would. Do you remember you said if we found the man who threatened me on the phone, we'd have our murderer?
I still say it.
Well, in that case, the man hunts over. I just heard that same voice again.
Nick.
Yes, baby. It was Gene.
What time you got, Nick?
Relax, Sergeant, relax. He'll be here. I just hope your boys downstairs don't frighten him away.
I'm very tired, gentlemen. Is it necessary that I remain?
I'm afraid so, Professor. That goes for you, too, Sylvia.
Quiet. Come in.
No, Gene, don't. It's a trap.
What the... Come in, fella. Get those hands up.
All the way.
No, will you close the door?
Gene, I tried to warn you.
Oh, it's all right, honey. I guess I've got Mr. Charles to thank for this. Uh-huh. You dirty double-crosser. You never should have threatened me, Gene. That happens to be a pet aversion of mine.
What are you talking about?
The night you first came up here, you sent me a funeral wreath.
I can explain that.
Yes, so can I. Now, you wanted me to introduce you to the professor. You knew I wouldn't. So you applied simple psychology. You sent me the wreath and ordered me not to. And you figured I'd do just the opposite. The only trouble was I refused to bite.
But I did.
Yes, darling. You stuck your beautiful neck way out. You did exactly what they hoped for when you took them up to their uncle.
I am not their uncle.
I'm sorry, Professor. That's quite true.
You're crazy, Charles.
You deny you sent the wreath?
No, but I do deny killing Irwin.
Now, wait a minute, pal. I never accused you of that.
You never...
What are you talking about, Nick?
That's what I said.
Darling, I don't understand.
But you do, don't you, Professor? These kids aren't related to you.
No, of course not. They are imposters.
Well, that doesn't necessarily follow. The shoe could be on the other foot, couldn't it?
Come on, Nick. Don't be coy. What are you getting at?
The professor's the imposter. He killed Irwin.
What?
Uncle, you didn't.
All right, everybody. Stay as you are.
Better put away the gun, Professor. It's out of character.
Get down, Nick!
Oh!
Professor! Professor!
You're wasting your time, Nick. I never miss.
All set there?
Mm-hmm.
Then out go the lights.
Nicky.
Oh, Nora.
Darling.
Oh, well, it's fairly simple, dear. Sylvia's uncle, the real Professor Wainger, died in Czechoslovakia, and our phony friend was an opportunist who assumed his name and finances. See, it never occurred to us that he could have been the bogus article as well as Sylvia.
But why did he kill Irwin?
Well, he had to. He was on the spot. The government wanted him to work on a submarine detector, but not having the real professor's ability, he couldn't deliver.
But if his life were in danger, he'd have a valid reason to stop working.
Yes, exactly.
Oh. But what put you on the right track, darling?
Well, we were overlooking one thing. The actual result in the case was Irwin's death. And if you assumed that was what was really intended, you got yourself a brand new suspect with a brand new motive.
I see. But, darling, there's one person I'm sorry for.
Who's that?
Turkey, the florist.
No.
Think of it. For the rest of his life, he'll be stuck with that wreath.
Nora. You hear what I hear?
Uh-huh. It sounds like...
Someone's nailing something on the door.
It's Turkey.
Undoubtedly.
Well, darling, here we go again.
Well, men, that solves the case and brings down the curtain on today's Frontline Theater play. But there are more plays coming, and your favorite stars will be in them. So keep on listening, won't you? Our thanks to the makers of Woodbury Soap for their cooperation. Frontline Theater is presented for you men in the armed forces of the United Nations by the Special Service Division of the War Department of the United States of America.
Welcome back. A good mystery here, and Claudia Morgan kind of getting introduced to her as Nora Charles, and her modus operandi to use her wiles and overall personality to get information. It's a pretty good portrayal of Nora Charles, and a nice spin on the character. By the way, United Nations, when you hear that referred to during World War II era code, it shows it's not referring to the organization we now call the United Nations. This was more a term of art for the Allies. United Nations was not actually formed until 1945. Listener comments, we do have one from Robert, who commented when we did the Thin Man movies are some of my all-time favorites. Never knew they did any radio shows. Looking forward to listening. Well, Robert, I hope you are enjoying the program. Well, today we're going to get into Nero Wolfe. Your choice for us to listen to this year. I know that a lot of folks became fans of Nero Wolfe through the A&E television show, which adapted several Nero Wolfe novels. Of course, there are quite a few novels by Rex Stout that didn't quite make it to television, and always there's more detail you can pick up in books. That's why we were pleased to recommend Audible. You go to audiblepodcast.com/oldtimeradio. You can sign up for a 2-week free trial, and you get a free audiobook. And if you'd like, you can choose a Nero Wolfe title for your listening pleasure. Well, we turn to Nero Wolfe. I know those who've been familiar with the radio series, most remember those that starred Sidney Greenstreet as Nero Wolfe. However, this was not the beginning of Nero Wolfe on the radio. There were actually 3 different series of Nero Wolfe broadcasts. The first run of Nero Wolfe on the radio began in 1943 over something called the New England Network. And then, from 1943 to 44, it ran over the Blue Network, The Adventures of Nero Wolfe, and we don't have any of the 1943 episodes. However, we have one episode of the 1944 Nero Wolfe series. This one stars Louis Van Rooten as Wolfe and Joseph Julian as Archie Goodwin. And this was a rebroadcast on the Armed Forces Radio Service Mystery Playhouse. During the war, it was really the AFRS's method to have shows that brought a variety of different shows to soldiers, as you couldn't bring all 3 or 4 networks over there. And in this case, they had a celebrity host in the person of Peter Lorre, who provided the commentary and the tone for the presentation of the episode. And in this episode, Mr. Lorre does a good job introducing Nero Wolfe. Production is somewhat necessary because Nero Wolfe had only been around as a detective story for about 10 years. It was not as universally known, perhaps, as today. So let's go ahead and listen to The Last Laugh Murder Case.
Good evening. This is Peter Lorre. Well, since murderers and thieves are unlikely to stay long in one place, it seems reasonable to assume that crime detection requires a certain amount of physical activity. A theory which tonight's leading character dismisses with, bah. Give him a chance to prove his point, won't you? Listen to the Mystery Playhouse. If extreme fleshiness and a profound disinclination to move were a real handicap, then you and I would be little concerned with one Nero Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, as you may be aware, has won for himself considerable acclaim as a detective par excellence, a veritable scourge of the unlawful, an avenging demon to those with guilty hands. And Nero has attained his enviable reputation without stirring from his extremely easy chair, except, of course, for bare essentials such as eating, sleeping, and admiring his orchids. This sedentary mass of protoplasm, when there's any distasteful movement required, or he simply calls on his confidential secretary and trusted assistant, Archie. Yes, Archie Goodwin, Nero Wolfe's good right hand, provides the footwork. And he tells the story, too. Here he is.
I dislike pessimists. Take the one who said there's nothing new under the sun. Getting down to cases, he may have been right. But he overlooked something. The basic facts may remain much the same, but there's always a new wriggle. There were babes in his day. There are, thank heavens, babes in mine. The fundamental idea hasn't changed much. But when you consider the modern materials and techniques... Well, July is warm, isn't it? Besides, he didn't say anything about under the moon, did he? The same thing is true, although not quite so important, about detectives. I'd been reading a book about the old-timers, and I remarked casually, Boss, I've been reading a book.
Bah!
No, that's not the title. The title is Great Detectives of Yesteryear.
Were there any?
It may strike you as a revolutionary idea, but there seem to have been some.
Primitive fumblers, no doubt.
That's not what the guy who wrote this book thinks.
Can he think?
He says there'll never be detectives as great as they were.
Fiddlesticks. What could they do that I can't?
Walk 100 yards?
That's simply substituting sweat for intelligence.
I'm not so sure. Some of the things they did were terrific. For example, they could take one look at a man and tell you how old he was, where he was born, what he had for breakfast that morning, and whether he was intelligent or just an isolationist.
Child's play, Archie.
You could do it?
Naturally.
I don't believe it.
What would you like me to do? Give you a demonstration?
Sure. Bar is no contribution to conversation. Me, I think you're hedging.
I'm doing nothing of the sort. It's simply that...
Let's forget the whole thing. After all, you are not perfect. You have your failings. You're entitled to a few. Warm for July, isn't it?
Archie.
Although there have been warmer Julys, on the other hand, there have been colder ones, taking them all...
Archie. Get up.
I'm up.
Splendid. You know where the door is.
Of course, you're not banishing me from hearth and home.
Go through it. Stop the first man that passes this house. Bring him to me. You understand?
A glimmer begins to light up my mental darkness.
I look at him and tell you his profession, his matrimonial status, his habits, and many other little things about him you might like to know.
You will?
I've said so, haven't I?
I know, but, boss, should a man of your weight get so far out on a limb?
Archie!
I'm going, and I'll be back with a $64 question. Mr. Wolfe.
Yes.
This gentleman was passing by, and I asked him to come in.
You explained why.
Uh-huh. Mr. Wolfe, this is Mr. Henry Kramer.
How do you do, sir?
Hello, Mr. Wolfe.
Yes, Mr. Kramer. You shan't have to keep you very long. Your wife must be awaiting dinner for you.
Huh?
Yes, and the children.
The limb is beginning to bend under that weight.
No doubt you've had a hard day at the office, but a brisk shower, a quick shave with that old-fashioned straight razor you use, and you'll be a new man. Agree with me, Archie?
I'm either on the verge of taking off my mental hat to you or else preparing to laugh. How do you know he's married and has children?
You have eyes as well as I, if you use them. The old band on his finger makes it evident the gentleman's married. As for children, Mr. Kramer's in his 30s. His health appears good. If he had no children, he'd be in the army.
Maybe he's got a bum knee or...
Mr. Kramer.
Oh, no, but... Kind of close on that. How about the office work?
The cuff of his right sleeve is considerably more worn than the rest of the suit. Use of a pen for a good many hours during the day is indicated. Couple that with Mr. Kramer's pallor and...
The straight razor?
The bloodstain on Mr. Kramer's collar. Too large to have been caused by the comparatively small nicks made by a safety razor.
Maybe his wife bit him.
You all finished, Mr. Wolfe?
Yes. Why?
Yeah, because I thought perhaps there might be something else you could figure out. My grandmother's maiden name, for instance.
Confound you, sir. Stop that brag.
I can't help it. It was clever of you, but, well, first of all, I'm not married. Naturally, I have no children.
Indeed.
This wedding band used to belong to my mother. Another thing, I don't work in an office.
Where do you work?
Troubleshooter in the field for the telephone company.
Stop it. You're breaking our heart.
And I never used a straight razor in my life. I wouldn't know how. Electric shaver for me. The blood on my collar is from nosebleed. I get it once in a while.
That cracks the limb. Mr. Wolfe, shall I show Mr. Kramer out and fish for another one?
Oh, now, wait a minute. Don't rib the old gentleman.
Oh, gentlemen. Me.
Mr. Kramer's going in for a little deduction on his own.
Be still, Archie. Mr. Kramer, thank you, and good night.
Good night, Mr. Wolfe. Sorry, it didn't work out.
As I said, it's a very warm July. Warmest since 1880, I think.
Are you trying to spare my feelings?
Don't be silly. I'm elaborately kibitzing, Mr. Wolfe.
Better not. Kramer laughed. But I rather think, Archie, it wasn't the last laugh in this matter.
What do you mean?
The man who was just here is not only a thorough liar, Archie, but
what?
But a murderer as well.
As deductions go, that's kind of track.
So was murder.
According to you, then, Kramer was lying about his family and his job, huh?
Naturally.
Okay, I'll make a phone call.
To whom?
Surprise, to the phone company. Hello, operator. Personnel department, please. Thank you. Even if Kramer was lying, why should you think he's a murderer? Hello? Yes, I'm checking on a Mr. Henry Kramer. Yes, he claims to be one of your field representatives. Uh-huh. Oh, hold on. She sounds blonde. Yeah? Uh-huh. I see. Thanks a lot. And, what do you do after work? You... Oh, well, so long. She goes home and beats her husband.
About Kramer, Archie.
Bad news, boss. He does work for the phone company as a field representative. So where does that leave your deductions?
Untouched, of course. Let me think. Yes. Naturally.
Nature covers a multitude of sins. What do you mean by naturally?
I came to the conclusion that the man whom you brought to me was an office worker. We have just discovered that Kramer is not an office worker. Therefore...
You were wrong.
I am never wrong. Therefore, the man who was here is not Kramer.
That's the limb to beat all limbs getting out on, if you know what I mean.
Fiddlesticks. Look up Kramer in the phone book and call him.
Okay, but what do I ask him?
Let me see. Of course.
Well, that's not the kind of thing you can ask a man.
Never mind, just call.
You're the boss. Let's see. Here he is. Malcolm. 49438. Hello? I'd like to speak to Henry Kramer. What? Who are you? Oh, well, no, don't bother, Captain McQuillan. Let him stay that way. So long.
Yes, Archie.
I understand now why you weren't bothered about what to ask Kramer. But how did you know?
Logic, Archie. I was correct then in assuming that Kramer...
You were correct. Henry Kramer is dead. He was...
murdered.
Well.
Oh, come in, Goodwin. I've been waiting for you.
Why, Captain McQuillan, how sweet of you.
Why did you phone Kramer?
Because he laughed at Wolfe?
Did you have to kill him just because
Don't be silly. What are you doing, keeping the stiff company?
Yeah, and his girl.
Oh, Captain.
She doesn't even know I'm alive.
Smart girl. Are you? Hey,
Huh?
is that Kramer lying near the window?
Yeah. You want an introduction?
Never mind. We've met before. Hey,
What's the matter? Did he pull a gun on you, the dirty corpse?
you've been robbed. This corpse isn't Kramer.
You've been robbed of brains. That's Kramer. His fingerprints checked with the phone companies. His girlfriend identified him. What makes you think he isn't?
Because when he visited us earlier tonight, he was about a head taller, had brown hair instead of blonde, and Wolfe was right, darn him.
Captain McQuillan. Oh.
That's all right. Ignore him. He comes with the woodwork. What's up, Miss Saunders?
Do you have to let people stare at Henry as though he were an exhibit?
Find what you were looking for, Miss Saunders?
How dare you? What do you mean?
Somebody's gone through this place like a minor league hurricane, looking for something. You?
Who is he?
An adjunct to a very fat orchid fancier.
Archie Goodwin. I'm Nero Wolfe's assistant. You love Kramer?
We were going to be married.
Yes, I can see that's out. Want his murderer found?
Of course I do. More than anything else in the world.
Swell. You want Nero Wolfe, 601 West 35th Street. And you want him fast.
Now, listen, Goodwin. The police are working on this case.
Sure, they'll protect the corpse very well. Remember the address, Miss Saunders. Goodbye, Captain.
Goodbye, you ambulance chaser.
You're getting to be so brilliant, boss. It's boring.
Just my habit. Passerby was not Kramer. Was not a phone company employee and was a murderer.
You haven't proved that last yet.
I will, Archie. I will.
That must be Miss Saunders.
She's young and beautiful.
You deduced that from the way she buzzed the buzzer?
I deduced that from the gleam in your eye.
All you want. I'm going to keep the gleam shining. Hello, Miss Saunders. Come in.
Thank you. Mr. Wolfe?
Is the large sitting down gentleman behind the desk. This is Miss Saunders, Mr. Wolfe.
How do you do, my dear? Police been successful?
No, they haven't found the murderer.
Have they found anything else?
Anything? What do you mean?
Archie tells me Henry Kramer was over 40 and remarkably unattractive. You're the reverse. Why were you marrying him?
I loved him.
Unconvincing. What were you searching for under Captain McQuillan's nose?
Nothing.
How did your fiancé make a living?
He worked for the phone company.
Fiddlesticks. You checked his record. He was absent more often than not. He earned hardly enough for cigarette money. Did he give you that engagement ring on your finger?
Why, yes.
I suggest it's worth more than Henry Kramer earned in a year with the telephone company. Miss Saunders, Henry Kramer was killed and his apartment searched. This case, post hoc propter hoc.
He means, translating from the Latin, that he was killed so that his killer could search the apartment.
Thank you. Miss Saunders, why were you marrying Henry Kramer?
I had to.
Better. Why did you have to?
Because he had letters of mine that...
Archie, get Miss Saunders into the kitchen at once.
Cooking letters?
Blast you, that must be the police at the door. To your left, Miss Saunders, quickly, and stay there until I call.
All right.
Answer the door, Archie.
Do I know Ellen is here?
You know nothing. An easy role for you to play.
I'll swallow that insult for the moment, but wait till the next time you drop a collar button, won't wait to pick it up with. Why, bless my old eyes if it isn't Captain McQuillan. Haven't we met before?
Where's Wolfe?
Surprise, he's sitting down.
Huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, hello, Mr. Wolfe.
Good evening, Captain.
Where's Ellen Saunders?
This is not the Bureau of Missing Persons,
I think she's here.
Indeed.
Yeah, I want her.
Why?
To take home and show his wife how they're coming off the assembly line these days.
Now, listen, Goodwin.
No, Captain, you listen. I've opened my door to you. I expect courtesy. What do you want?
Ellen Saunders. The district attorney would like to see her.
I'll tell her the next time we meet.
That could be right now. She's here.
I don't see her. Do you, Archie?
Just a second while I look around. No, I don't see her either.
The routine isn't very good. Mind if I looked around myself?
You have a search warrant, of course.
Well, as it happens, no.
In that case, Captain, I've enjoyed this little chat with you, and good night. Archie, the captain is leaving.
Okay, I'm leaving. I suppose by the time I get back with the warrant, she'll be in Hoboken.
Hoboken? Where is that?
Oh, nuts. Trail me to the door, Goodwin, to show what a good detective you are. Who is...
He was mad.
No doubt. Archie, take Miss Saunders to a respectable hotel and register under an assumed name. You should stay there until I notify her otherwise. I don't want her arrested for murder, yet.
Her beauty has won you over.
Then return here immediately.
No stay?
You say in your own repulsive way, no stay.
Archie? Now. No, not Archie.
The gentleman who was so amused by my demonstration. Mr. Kramer. Well, not Mr. Kramer, after all.
Where's the girl?
That question's beginning to bore me. I don't know.
I think she's here.
So do the police. Don't be a fool. Incidentally, what makes you think she was an accomplice of Kramer's?
Well, she must have been. You
mean she must have been, but she wasn't. Kramer was blackmailing her into marriage, just as he was blackmailing you.
The story sounds attractive, Mr. Wolfe. So do Kramer's stories. Where is she?
I don't know.
Would this help you to remember?
Good heavens. Don't point a pistol at me. It annoys me.
It may kill you.
The police, I should think. Open the door for them, like a good fellow.
Now, I haven't got the time. I'll be back. If I don't find her...
Lock the blasted door down if it isn't open.
Well, I got the search warrant, Mr. Wolfe.
Indeed, Captain.
Yeah.
Also, no doubt, a fine-tooth comb. Oh, yes, as you go through the house, close the back window. I've just had a burglar, and I rather think he left it open.
You had a what?
Burglar. May I point out that warrant you're clutching in your hot little hand is not a lease on the house? Finish your search and go home. You look tired. You've been trying to think. Yes, Archie. You've just missed Captain McQuillan.
That I can stand. I'm sorry I missed the burglar, though.
You'll see him in the morning where he works.
He told you where?
Not in so many words, but take a deep breath.
I have.
Notice anything?
Perfume. Ellen's? No, I would have noticed if she'd been wearing any when I said goodnight. Strike that from the record.
Yes. Our burglar left that odor. I recognized it because it is the perfume with which a soap basely mislabeled as orchid ovals is treated. I say basely because orchids have no odor.
Okay, so the guy washes with a basely mislabeled soap.
No. The odor would not have been so persistent in that case. Unquestionably, our visitor works for the soap company. Every employee of a plant in which perfume is used invariably carries the odor on his clothes.
And since you've already deduced he works in an office, I'll look him up in the morning. What with hiring rooms for girls and paying visits to a perfume factory, I'm beginning to feel like a maiden aunt.
No one would ever mistake you for a maiden aunt, Archie.
Thanks. Why?
Because maiden aunts rarely need a shave.
Orchid Oval Soap Company. Good morning. Who did you wish to see?
I'd be happy just standing here and looking at you. But business is, as the proverb has it, business. I'm looking for one of your office employees. He's in his 30s, 5'10", brown hair.
Oh, you mean Harmon. Does he owe you money, too?
You could say that. Is he in?
He was, but he went home sick. He was green in the face.
A family failing. Did he get a call maybe from his wife or somebody?
He got a call from somebody.
All I wanted to know, sister. So long and thanks.
Yes?
Archie, our unknown's name is Harmon. He left the office this morning, sick, after he got a call from a girl who wasn't his wife.
Bad. Get Miss Saunders at once and bring her here.
Right. I'm at Harmon's home now. Thought I'd check.
He does have children, huh?
2, boy and girl. How do you do
Never
it?
mind. Hurry. And Archie, don't stop to console Mrs. Harmon. She's about to suffer a great loss.
Ninth floor, huh? Thanks. 909. Miss Saunders. Ellen Goodwin. Nice. Here we are. Archie and Ellen. Archie, no light. Door open? It was. Careless.
Careful, Mr. Goodwin.
Archie, he's the...
I'd prefer silence. Keep your hands high, Goodwin.
A very distressing position makes the blood run into my head.
He killed Henry, Archie.
Mr. Harmon, you really shouldn't. It's against the law.
Get into the bathroom, both of you.
I've already shaved this morning.
I phoned him. I thought he might have my letter.
I burned all the filthy blackmail material he had. I don't want to kill either of you, but I must.
Let's not lose our heads about this. Besides, Ellen is too young to die. I'm too young to die, too. As a matter of fact, we're all too young to die. Let's not.
Get moving, Goodwin.
I like it here, thanks.
All right, then. Let it be here.
Hey, the wrong man fell down. Harmon, you shot me. Or did you?
I shot him, Goodwin.
Captain McQuillan, you little flat-footed angel.
Lucky for you, my flat feet got me here in time.
Just for that, I'll buy you a pair of arch supports on your next birthday. What worries me, though, is how you had this all figured out. Such heavy thinking isn't like you.
Well, as a matter of fact,
Wolfe sent you here.
Well, he did phone in and suggest I come here and do a bit of rescue work.
The old devil.
You're not kidding. Because he didn't seem to be sure whether you would need rescue from Harmon.
Yeah, or?
Or whether Miss Saunders would need to be rescued from you.
You've been a very foolish young woman, Miss Saunders. I suggest in the future you exercise more care in your correspondence.
Oh, I will, Mr. Wolfe. How can I thank you?
Well, Ellen, one way would be to listen wide-eyed while he explains how he solved the case.
Well, I hadn't intended to, but...
Come on, boss. Stop stalling.
Well, it was really quite simple.
For someone as brilliant as you, Mr. Wolfe.
You've got the idea, baby. He loves it.
However, my dear, the very first time we saw Harmon, he lied about an unimportant detail. Thus I knew he was a murderer. He lied about the bloodstain on his collar.
He said it was nosebleed.
Have you ever tried bleeding from your nose onto your collar? Just can't be done.
A razor cut?
He assured us he used an electric shaver. His lie about what seemed to be so trifling a matter indicated the blood was not his own.
And he did lie about the rest of your analysis, too. His being married, the kids, the office work.
Bloody idiot. To assume I would think I'd been mistaken. Bah.
I think you were wonderful, Mr. Wolfe. I'm going to kiss you.
Now, look here. I advise you not to.
There, you darling.
Archie, Miss Saunders is a dangerous young woman.
I'll try to be brave.
Thank you, Archie. Well, I've got to go now. Goodbye, Mr. Wolfe. Archie?
I'll see you to the door. What are you doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday?
You didn't ask me what I was doing Sunday.
Well, that's easy. The same thing you'll be doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Good night, Archie. Till Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Last you stop creating a draft with your gusty sighs.
Have you no romance in your soul? I know the answer. But something else occurs to me. Boss, you didn't collect a fee on this case. That's terrible.
Perhaps I didn't. But, well, the case came into being simply because you confronted me with the shades of great detectives. Dead and gone. Shall we say, then, that my fee in this case will be my membership in their ranks?
Well, Mr. Nero Wolfe, you have my vote. A fine job of deduction, sir. It's obvious that, wherever else it may be, there's certainly no fat on your brain cells. Take it easy, Nero, as if you won't. And we'll be bringing our microphone around your way again soon. Oh, please don't go. We haven't visited the green room, where the cast is rehearsing our next performance. Come with me, please. Come. Come.
Gentlemen, please. If you'll give me a chance, gentlemen, please. Thank you. The Royal Galleries are proud to anoint the discovery of a great art treasure. The lost Cellini Gold Cup made by the great Florentine master for the Cardinal of Ferrara. Since bidders have had an opportunity to view the cup for several days, there is no need to go into a detailed description. Beyond pointing out that the inlay detail, the magnificent design, the delicacy of the metalwork mark this a masterpiece. Very well. We'll proceed without further preliminary. I have here a mail bid of $25,000. Will somebody bid more?
26,500.
26,500 bid. Bear in mind, gentlemen, this is probably destined to be the unique Cellini piece of the world. Do I hear another bid?
30,000.
Thank you, Mr. Ecker. 30,000 bid. Do I hear 31?
$30,000.
31.
brewer, Miss Porter.
31,000.
He owns the finest collection of Cellini out in the world, then, doesn't he? Yes, Al. Swell agent. Brewer, eh? Heck, will have to sell a lot of beer to pay for that cup the way he's going.
$35,000.
Mr. Jacob Ecker bids 35,000. Am I bid more? 35,000 once. 35,000 twice.
36,000. 37.
38. 40.
Mr. Royal, please, may I have the floor?
The floor, Mr. Ecker? Well, yes. Quiet, please. Quiet.
Gentlemen, as many of you know, I promised the City Museum a few months ago that the next Cellini piece I bought would be donated to the museum. When the museum heard that I was interested in purchasing the lost Cellini Gold Cup discovered a short time ago by Mr. Samuel, give my promise. I'm afraid I'm stuck.
Gentlemen, let Mr. Ecker speak, please.
So now I've got to buy this great Cellini piece and donate it to the City Museum. But don't make any mistake. I'm not going to be bid up out of all reason. I'll pay my maximum figure, and that's all. Mr. Royal, my final bid is $65,000.
65,000 once, 65,000 twice. Sold to Mr. Jacob Ecker for $65,000.
Ellery, I can't go on. I'm so sleepy.
Lord, it's midnight. I didn't realize the time. You go on home, Nicky. Oh, who's that? I'll take it.
Okay.
Hello?
Ellery? Ben Royal.
Ben? Midnight? What's the matter?
Look, El, maybe I'm a fool, but I'm scared.
Scared? Where are you, Ben?
I'm home alone.
Let me put my head close to the phone, Ellery.
I've been here all evening in my workroom, Ellery, cleaning and polishing the Cellini cup to get it ready for delivery.
Where's your father?
Well, Pop had to drive out to Long Island. His sister's sick, and I guess he'll stay overnight. Look, Ellery, this is going to sound like kid stuff.
Never mind how it sounds, Ben. What happened?
Well, while I was polishing the cup, my light suddenly went out. I think it was every light in the house, though I haven't left the room to find out. I've been afraid to. Well, go ahead, snicker.
He's been sitting in the dark.
Main fuse probably blew, Ben. An accident.
Yeah? Well, suppose it wasn't. Suppose someone deliberately yanked it out of the fuse box in the cellar. Maybe it was done to lure me downstairs so that whoever did it could sneak into my workroom up here on the first story and swipe the Cellini cup. How do I know? Yeah, what'll I do?
First thing to do is latch the door of your room. The room you're in, Ben.
Yeah, well, I've already slid the bolt. There's only one door, thank the Lord. I've even locked the windows. I only had a gun.
You'd probably shoot your big toe off. Stay put, Ben. I'm coming over. You're in that old brownstone at the corner of West 77th and West End, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah, you'll find my workroom at the head of the stairs, one flight up. Your pal.
Be there in 10 minutes, and don't let anyone into that room till I get there, Ben. Anyone, understand?
You bet.
Ellery, I'm going with you.
Oh, but there may be danger.
Oh, Phil.
All right, I can't waste time arguing. Dig that flashlight out of my desk, Nicky, and come on.
That sounds like action, doesn't it? I wonder what's going on in that fellow's house. Nothing trivial, I hope. But anyway, we'll all have to wait for our next performance when the master detective, Mr. Ellery Queen, relates the adventure of the thief in the dark. I think it might appeal to you. I really do. This is Peter Lawrence closing the doors of the Mystery Playhouse. Good night. Sleep tight. This is the Armed Forces Radio Service.
Welcome back. Well, a pretty good little mystery here. It may not quite have the ring of a Nero Wolfe mystery to those who have read the books and seen the television show. They're kind of limited by the half-hour space, and Rex Stout, who wrote Nero Wolfe, was never quite satisfied with the radio and film adaptations of his story that were made during his lifetime. But still, I thought it was plenty of fun and an interesting twist on the character for radio. Well, we do have one comment here before we go. This is from Kimber Smith Fiddler, who writes on Facebook, "I love these podcasts. Really enjoyed the Father Brown earlier this week. Any chance we'll get to hear any more of them?" Well, subsequent to that, there was one more episode we played. As with all the shows we play where there are lost episodes, which is pretty much every show we've done, except for Box 13. If some of those lost episodes emerge, we'll go back. Next time we have a appropriate vacancy, we run out of a show, but we'll go back. From reports I've read, there were up to 8 and perhaps more episodes of Father Brown produced. However, this was right towards the end of World War II, and that whole World War II era was kind of a tough time for finding old-time radio transcriptions. But we'll certainly see. We'll be back tomorrow. I do want to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to check out your local entertainment book. Go to entertainment.greatdetectives.net. Be able to get a discount on this great money-saving book, which gives you access to a wide variety of discounted and buy one, get one free services from merchants in your area. The best thing is that it's customized with local merchants. Just go to entertainment.greatdetectives.net. Well, a little apology for the sound on today's episode of Let George Do It. The sound's a little bit off, kind of a scratchy noise towards the middle, clears up a little bit towards the end. Let's go ahead and we will take a listen to today's episode, Come and Get Me.
Standard of California, on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and standard stations throughout the West, invites you to Let George Do It. Come and Get Me, another adventure of George Valentine.
Personal notice, danger's my stock and trade. If life's got you in a spin and you need someone to pull you out of it, you got a job for me, George Valentine. Write full details.
Dear Mr. Valentine, are you an imbecile? I trust not, yet fear you will betray that trust. To look for intelligence in this morass of idiocy known as contemporary civilization is to embark on a search much less likely to succeed than the one pursued by Diogenes. However, let me state my difficulty. I have committed a perfect crime. Alas, too perfect, because I now find it necessary
to confess my guilt. But no one will believe me. If you do happen to have enough sense to comprehend the possibility of my being a murderer, I should like to engage you to help me prove it to the proper authorities. Awaiting an early reply, I am Winslow Barker.
Huh?
Well, George, don't be so smug. Didn't you hear me? The man wants you to prove he's a murderer.
Well, no accounting for taste, Angel.
Oh, he must be crazy.
Maybe.
Well, no sane person would write a letter like that.
Still, he raised an interesting question. He wants to know if I'm an imbecile. What do you think, Brooksy?
Are you going to take this letter seriously?
Huh?
Then the answer to his question is yes.
Good of you to come, Valentine. And you, Miss Brooks.
Thank you.
Not at all, Mr. Barker. This we had to hear.
Well, here we are. Refreshment before we get down to business, eh? See how you like that. Little concoction of my own.
Oh, thanks, Barker. Well, long life. Even though you don't happen to subscribe to that old-fashioned notion.
Oh, this is delicious.
Yeah.
Fools.
What's that?
You will notice I lifted my glass to my lips, but I did not drink. Yet you both went right ahead. How do you feel?
How should we feel?
Oh, never occurred to you that I'd poison you, did it?
George.
Hey, wait a minute, Buster.
With pleasure.
Why should you poison us?
Oh, who knows? But this fact you do know. I am a confessed murderer. Yet you take not the simplest precaution.
Brooksy, remind me to buy a portable stomach pump.
Not a joking matter, Mr. Valentine. You know, I may be quite mad.
Oh, don't try to tell me you really have poisoned us.
Very well. Wait and see.
Oh, or have you?
Yes, wait and see.
The lady said, have you?
No, Mr. Valentine. As a matter of fact, I haven't poisoned you. You're perfectly all right.
Perfectly? You just took 10 years off my life.
Oh, no, I haven't poisoned you, but I have tested you, Mr. Valentine.
Yeah, how'd I do, Professor?
Your complete lack of caution indicates but two possibilities. One, you're like all the rest. You don't take me seriously. You don't believe I am a murderer. Or two, you're fantastically stupid. In either case, you're of little use to me. Now, good day.
Not so fast, Parker. Let's ride with possibility number one for a minute.
Oh, you don't believe that I am a murderer, is that it?
A man's presumed to be innocent, Parker, until...
Even if he presumes himself to be guilty?
Well, I'm willing to be shown. Who'd you kill?
Donald Anderson. And I want you to prove it, so the police will come and get me.
Why did you kill him?
Anderson was ugly. Ugly in mind and in spirit. So I removed him.
Just like that, huh?
Yes, just like that. And no one knew.
But now you want them to know.
Yes. You think I'm mad?
No.
You don't? You must be crazy. All sane people think I'm a crackpot.
Just why do you want the world to know you're a murderer?
Well, you see, Anderson's wife, Teresa, has been arrested for the murder. Now, I didn't anticipate that the police would be so gullible. Oh, I don't want anyone else to have to pay for my deed.
I see.
I've confessed. The police laugh at me. They have their suspect. They don't want to admit they're wrong. Oh, but they are devilishly wrong. And it's up to us to prove it. Well, Valentine, will you take the case?
Well, what have I got to lose except my time and your money? And I have lots of time.
And I have lots of money. Yes, perhaps you are worthy of the assignment after all.
Thanks. Now, is there anything at all to prove that you killed Anderson?
No, not a thing. That's the trouble. I was too brilliant, too disgustingly brilliant. There's not a shred of evidence.
Oh, great.
But don't you worry, Valentine. With your brawn and my brains, we'll find something.
Valentine, you can save your energy on this Anderson case. We have it all sewed up.
Maybe you dropped a couple of stitches, Lieutenant. It could have come apart at the seams.
Oh, please, pal, go away, will you? I'm busy.
Okay. If you want to besmirch your sterling record by helping to convict the wrong man. Or, in this case, it's a woman, isn't it, Riley?
You know darn well it's a woman. Oh, okay. What's your angle, Valentine?
Winslow Parker.
Huh? Oh, no, not that slappy lunatic.
Yeah, that slap-happy lunatic. What makes you so sure he didn't do the job?
Because we happen to know Anderson's wife did it.
Well, how about briefing me on the reasons?
Well, okay. Motive? Mrs. Anderson was in love with somebody else, Jonathan Gaines. But her husband wouldn't give her a divorce.
I see.
Now, opportunity, she was in the house when it happened.
Anything else?
Plenty. A couple of days before the murder, she buys a gun. Right after the murder, she gives the gun to her boyfriend, Mr. Gaines. And when we tried to get it from him, he says he lost it. We're supposed to swallow that. He lost the gun.
Why'd she say she gave him the gun? To hang it on his slave bracelet?
She says she was afraid her husband was going to try to kill Gaines, and she wanted him to be able to protect himself. Claims she didn't know at the time her husband was already dead.
Riley, maybe she's telling the truth.
Oh, come off it, pal, will you? It's an open and shut case. All we need is the gun to clinch it, and I think we can hang it on her even without it. Especially with Farnsworth's testimony.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Who's Farnsworth, an added starter?
Anderson's valet. He overheard Mrs. Anderson giving the gun to Gaines and practically admitting she did the job. Well, satisfied yet?
Not quite.
What more do you want?
Conversation, Riley, conversation. With a valet. I dearly love the sound of those bells, but come on, somebody. Come on, answer the door.
Come to think of it, George, will Farnsworth be here? His master is dead, and the master's wife is in jail.
I understand the house is going to be sold, Brooks. His servants are staying on to do the piping.
George?
Yeah. It's a high C with a kick in it. Come on, open up in there.
Hear anyone coming?
Yeah, I think so.
Yes?
Say, what plays here?
Nothing, sir.
We heard screams, she remarked brightly.
Oh, that, miss. That was only Jessie.
Only Jessie? Who's Jessie?
The upstairs maid.
Well, what happened to her?
Nothing.
Oh, just trying out for the Metropolitan auditions.
Well, if you must know, sir, she's a sinner, and I don't like sin.
Oh, great. Well, what did you do to Jessie?
She'll be all right, sir.
That's not what he asked you.
Very well. I struck her.
Well, who are you to go around punishing sinners?
Somebody must see that right prevails.
Okay, Buster, okay. Where's Jessie now?
In the kitchen,
Hey,
sir,
Brooksy, go in and look after the girl while I have a talk with this avenging angel.
All right, George.
Now, Farnsworth, you are Farnsworth, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm coming in and ask you a few questions. You can close the door.
Very well, sir. What do you wish to ask about?
Mr. Anderson's murder.
Ah, yes, the murder. Unfortunate occurrence. But then, one must expect such things, mustn't one?
Must one?
Well, after all, that's life, isn't it? First thing you know, you're dead. Ah, yes, that's life.
Oh, brother, Charlie Chan with the wrong accent. Now, look, I understand you overheard Mrs. Anderson giving a gun to Mr. Gaines and asking him to get rid of it.
Correct. However, I should like you to understand, sir, I'm not in the habit of eavesdropping. But when there has been a murder, one feels it one's duty as it were.
Yeah, Farnsworth. You and your duty.
I simply press the point because, as a gentleman's gentleman, I know how my fellow gentleman's gentleman would feel if it were thought that one of their fellow gentlemen's gentlemen was no gentleman. Do you follow?
I think I lost you about 2 gentlemen back. But now, look, what I want to know, Farnsworth, you're absolutely sure you heard Mrs. Anderson tell Mr. Gaines to get rid of that gun?
Quite so, sir. She said, and I quote, "I've done something terrible, Jonathan. I've killed Donald. Here, take this gun and get rid of it for me before the police get here."
Unquote. You're sure she said that?
Absolutely, sir. However, since you repeat the question, am I to take it that you doubt my memory or my veracity?
Well, frankly, Farnsworth, you're a doubtful character, name and all. You belong in a book. Oh, Brooksy, how's the sinner?
Well, she's busy consigning Farnsworth to the place he thinks she's going.
Well, in that case, I guess there's nothing more for us to do around here. Come on, let's go.
Where?
Police headquarters, Brooksy. Oh, want to join us, Farnsworth?
I? Why, no, sir. Don't you know it's old hat to suspect the butler or the valet?
Now, would you please look, Lieutenant? You refuse to take my client seriously because you've got a hotter suspect. But suppose I can toss a bucket of ice water on your hot suspect.
All right, Valentine. Toss.
Okay, the valet, Farnsworth, is one of your chief witnesses, right?
So?
So? Did you know he's a religious fanatic, a one-man vice squad?
Again, so?
All right, now. Mrs. Anderson has been, shall we say, wandering a bit. Now, that's your big motive. And believe me, the way this Farnsworth is whacked up, it's just the sort of thing that would make him decide it's his duty to punish her.
Oh, you think Farnsworth is framing her for the murder as punishment for waltzing in 2 times?
Oh, it's amazing how clear I make myself sometimes.
But we know part of his story is true. The Anderson woman admits giving Gaines the gun, and he admits getting it from her.
Yeah, but she doesn't admit the murder.
Now, look, it's no use, Valentine. Mrs. Anderson gave Gaines that gun for him to get rid of.
Okay.
Well, why should she, unless she committed the murder?
Riley, I've been checking. Anderson didn't have any cash when he died. House was mortgaged to the hilt. Everything he had was tied up in a heavy insurance policy he bought a year and a half before he died.
All right.
Well, don't you see? Barker could have killed Anderson with Mrs. Anderson's gun and left the gun by the corpse. Mrs. Anderson finds it, thinks her husband has committed suicide.
So she takes the gun away and tells Gaines to get rid of it so she'll be convicted of murder.
She wanted it to look like murder instead of suicide. But she didn't count on Farnsworth pinning the murder on her.
But why would she want to... Oh, the insurance policy.
Oh, you're a dazzling sight, Riley, when you light up. Yeah, the insurance. The company wouldn't pay off on a suicide since the policy was less than 2 years old.
Well, stop gloating, Valentine. You could still be wrong.
Stop griping, Lieutenant. I still could be right.
Okay. I suppose I'd better look into it.
Yeah, force yourself. I think I'll go report to my client. He'll be delighted to know I've practically got him at the door of the gas chamber.
Well, I wonder what the little man who isn't all there will pull this time. My stomach is still doing nip-ups from that poison prank.
We'll soon see, Lucy. Wait a minute. Stand back, Angel. Somebody just came out of Barker's apartment.
Oh, it's too late. He already saw it.
Yeah, and he covered his face to make sure we can't see him. Hey, you, just a minute.
Stay back. I said stay back.
George! Oh, George, are you all right?
Yeah, you okay, Angel?
Oh, I'm fine, yeah.
He didn't want to hit us. He aimed at the floor to make us stop. We took the back stairs.
Oh, golly, did you see who it was?
No, he kept one hand in front of his face. Well, let's get into Barker's and see what this is all about.
Okay. But aren't you being optimistic, darling? Expecting Barker to make any sense?
I'm just an old Pollyanna. Come on, Barker, come on.
Oh, hello, Valentine. And Miss Brooks.
Mr. Barker, what happened?
You look like you've gone 15 rounds with a gorilla.
Well,
We'll return to tonight's adventure of George Valentine in just a moment. To get the best out of your car and to get economy through longer mileage, rely on Chevron Supreme gasoline. This premium quality gasoline is specially blended to give your car all these advantages. Faster starts every time you press the starter. Speedier warm-ups, alert getaway in heavy traffic driving, and ping-free power that lifts your car over the hill. What's more, Chevron Supreme is climate-tailored to the season of the year and to different temperature and altitude zones in the West. So wherever you drive and the year round, you can't buy a better gasoline for today's high-compression engine. Just try a tank full of Chevron Supreme tomorrow. Get it at standard stations and at independent Chevron gas stations, where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Now back to tonight's adventure of George Valentine. A man hires you to prove he is guilty of murder. After dutifully questioning his sanity, you succeed in turning police suspicion from their pet suspect to your client. In the due course of events, a furtive character takes a few shots at you. And a moment later, your client himself comes to the door of his apartment and drops at your feet. Being like George Valentine, you don't rock all the way back on your heels, because all along you've sniffed the proverbial rodent.
He's coming too, George.
Yeah, Brooksy. Hey, Barker. Barker, can you hear me?
Yes.
What happened?
Nothing.
Nothing. If your eyes weren't swollen shut by whoever worked you over, I'd tell you to go look in the mirror. Now, if that's your idea of nothing.
I mean nothing to do with the murder.
No?
No. It was just a burglar.
You don't say. What did he take? Hey, Barker.
Oh, he's passed out again, George.
Yeah, Angel, get on the phone and call a doctor.
Yes, right.
Hey, would you look at this?
What, George?
Some boards on the floor have been pried up.
Oh. Barker must have had something hidden under there.
Huh? Oh, something was stolen after all. Come on, hurry over that phone, Brooksy. I want to talk to Lieutenant Riley.
Well, I got here as fast as I could, Valentine. Now what goes?
Maybe you can tell me, Lieutenant.
All right, George. The doctor says it's all right to question Barker now.
Okay, thanks, Brooksy. Come on, Riley. Right with you. Well, one thing's obvious, Lieutenant. He's lying about this being just an ordinary robbery. Whatever was under that floor was tied in with a murder somehow.
Well, maybe you're right. And whoever took it knew that Barker had it and beat him into telling where it was hidden.
That's the way it stacks up to me. Oh, hiya, Barker. How you feeling now?
Oh, a little better, thanks. Hello, Lieutenant.
I'm here under protest.
I have some good news for you, my friend.
Oh, what?
Well, I've convinced the good lieutenant that there's something to your story after all. And if we stick together and work hard enough, we can make sure you die of an overdose of the gas chamber.
That's right, Barker. You want me to believe you killed Anderson? Well, I'm willing to go along. So, suppose you give me the details, and then we can go into what happened here.
I had you sized up right, Valentine. You did a thorough job. Therefore, I'd like to engage you for still another little task. I trust you'll be as successful.
What now?
Now, I want you to prove that I did not kill Anderson.
What did he say? Listen, you, I'll have you committed. I'll have you hung.
Don't shout, Lieutenant. I have a spitting headache.
Oh, I give up.
Very well, Lieutenant. You give up. How about you, Valentine? Are you as easily confounded?
I'm confounded, all right.
Oh, you won't take the case?
Oh, I didn't say that.
Now, look, Valentine, look. You just got through trying to prove this, well, whatever he is guilty. Now, do you mean to tell me that you're going to turn right around?
What can I do, Lieutenant? After all, the customer's always right.
Homicide.
Hello, Riley.
Oh, it's you, huh? Look, sign off, will you, pal? I'm a busy man. I haven't got time to talk to lunatics.
But, Riley,
You're as wacky as that client of yours.
Then humor me so I don't get violent.
What do you want?
The ballistics report on the bullets we dug out of the floor at Parker's place.
Okay, Valentine, I got the report right here. Those bullets came from the same gun that killed Anderson.
Wow. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. We're always getting somewhere. I'd like to stay put for a change.
Tell me something about that fuck Gaines, Lieutenant. You're not holding him, are you?
No, we haven't been able to tie him to the actual murder. We booked him for his shenanigans with the gun, but he's out on bail. Why?
Oh, I think I'll have a talk with him.
Now, where is that going to get you?
There's no telling, Riley. If I'm real lucky, maybe somebody will try to kill me.
It won't take up much of your time, Mr. Gaines.
All right. What do you want, Valentine?
Some facts. Make a few notes for the books.
Yes, George.
But look, Valentine, I told the police everything I know.
I'm not the police.
But you could have asked them.
Oh, they think I'm crazy.
Well, who am I to argue with the law?
You mean you won't talk?
Depends on what you ask.
Well, first of all, how well do you know Winslow Parker?
I don't. Never heard of him.
Well, then...
just a second while I answer that.
Yeah, sure.
George? He's not going to be such a...
Want to bet?
But I can tell where he's at. He's not going to talk.
He doesn't have to talk.
But you
Just a stall, Brooksy. All I wanted was to get a good look at him. I have. He's the impulsive lad who was at Parker's, the one who was bouncing bullets off the floor.
Are you sure?
Positive. He tried to hide his face when he was there, but I saw enough. And I recognized his voice, too.
Then he's lying. He does know our erratic client.
And now that I know it was Gaines who made that hasty exit, it all fits.
Oh, don't keep it a secret.
Well, look, Parker hired me to prove he killed Anderson.
Yes.
And all of a sudden he wants me to prove he didn't kill Anderson.
I know. I was there, remember.
Okay, then. Why the switch?
Well, don't ask me. This is your party.
Well, look, consider when Parker made the switch. Right after something was stolen from him. So isn't it reasonable to assume that the thing that was stolen, whatever it was, had a definite bearing on the case and on his changing his mind?
All right, but what was this thing, as you so descriptively call it?
Look, Angel, the person who did the stealing fired at me. And the police have proved he fired from the murder gun. He had the gun, so couldn't that be what he stole?
Maybe.
Okay, let's go back to the murder.
You never left it very far behind.
Now, look, I built up a theory around Anderson's insurance policy.
You mean that the company wouldn't pay off in case of suicide?
Yeah, but there's another situation in which they wouldn't pay off. And that seems to be the real cause of everything that's happened.
What?
The insurance company wouldn't pay if the beneficiary killed in order to collect.
Oh, now I see what you're driving.
Yeah, Mrs. Anderson kills her husband, gives the gun to Gaines to get rid of it. But Parker happens to see Gaines throw away the gun. He gets it and tries to blackmail Gaines and Mrs. Anderson with it.
Very neat. The gun is registered in Mrs. Anderson's name so that if it's found and proven to be the murder weapon, we'll clinch the case against her.
The trial would be just a civilized formality, Brooksy. But she can't pay blackmail because she has no money and can't collect the insurance as long as she's suspected of the murder.
So Barker agrees to confess so that Mrs. Anderson can collect and pay him off.
That's it, Brooksy. He plays it wacky, hoping to get off with an insanity plea. But he has an ace up his sleeve in case anything goes wrong. The gun. If he is convicted of first-degree murder, he can always throw the guilt back on Mrs. Anderson by producing the murder weapon.
That is, he could until Gaines stole it.
Exactly. Gaines let Barker stick his neck out, then stole the gun from him, hoping to pin the murder on Barker. Gaines and Mrs. Anderson walked hand in hand into the sunset. Feeney.
Nicely put, Valentine.
Ah, my. What big ears you have.
Don't move, either of you.
Oh, why should we? We're just as relaxed as a weightlifter and a barbell ad.
This is the gun you were talking so much about, Valentine. Looks like it still has one more job to do.
You're so right. It has. Riley.
Stop it, Gaines. What's got
You heard the lieutenant.
Careful, George.
Let it drop or you'll be carrying this arm around in a paper bag.
Well, you know, sometime you'll have to show me how you do that, Valentine.
Yeah, just call me Gorgeous George. Gaines, you were right about this gun having one more job to do. It's going to sew up the case against you and Mrs. Anderson. This time for good.
I've got to hand it to you, Valentine. How do you do it?
Oh, clean thoughts, fasting, daily shower.
Sending in box tops.
First you prove Barker guilty, then you prove him innocent.
Well, I ain't pleased.
Then you trick Gaines into producing the murder gun.
Oh, getting him off to the phone for a fake call was my idea.
You risk your own life. Brooksy's here, and not that it matters, mine. And where do we wind up? Where?
Well, Lieutenant...
I'll tell you. Just where we started. I already had Mrs. Anderson booked for murder, remember?
Yeah, but before your whole case rested on the testimony of a feather-headed valet. Even though he was telling the truth, a good lawyer would have tied him in knots. True?
Oh, I see you're standing on your constitutional rights and admitting nothing.
Well, Riley, now the gun is your clincher, and with Barker involved, you have him as a witness, too. He'll talk, so you'll go easy with that blackmail rap.
Okay, Valentine, okay. You know you've got everything. Courage, brains, ingenuity, bulldog perseverance, everything.
Why, Lieutenant, you forgot his most important asset. And it's so obvious.
What?
Tell him.
But didn't you ever notice? When he smiles, there's almost a dimple in his left cheek.
Anyone who has ever run a vacuum cleaner knows it has to be emptied at regular intervals or it's no go. Same thing holds true for your car's engine. That's why a crankcase drain and a refill with compounded RPM motor oil at regular intervals is so all important. You see, RPM has a special detergent compound that cleans as it lubricates. It controls the harmful wear-causing particles that collect in any engine, prevents them from depositing on and scratching finely polished interior engine parts, and gets rid of them when you have the oil changed. And RPM not only keeps your car's engine cleaner, it fights off corrosion, rust-proofs internal engine parts, and clings to the hot spots left bare and exposed to wear by ordinary motor oils. Next time you ask for motor oil, ask for RPM motor oil. Regular use of RPM means added life for your car's engine. No wonder RPM is first choice in the West. Get it tomorrow at any independent Chevron gas station or standard station where they say and mean, we take better care of your car. Next week, we'll come upon George Valentine in the study of a luxurious home in an exclusive section of the city, and Brooksy will be saying...
George, I was just trying out this typewriter.
I know, Brooksy, I heard you.
But don't you see?
Yeah, the lady lied.
You mean, think she took a shot at her husband and then came to us? Why would Peggy
I don't know,
to...
Angel, I don't know. But unless I have the proud Victoria sized up all wrong, the lady is still out to do murder.
Tonight's adventure of George Valentine has been brought to you by Standard of California on behalf of independent Chevron gas stations and Standard stations throughout the West. Robert Bailey is starred as George with Frances Robinson as Claire. Wally Mayer appears as Lieutenant Riley. Let George Do It is written by David Victor and Herbert Little, Jr. and directed by Don Clark. Also heard in the cast were Joe Kearns as Barker, Gain Whitman as Farnsworth, and Bob Bruce as Gaines. The music is composed and presented by Eddie Dunstetter. Announcer John Heaston. Listen again next week, same time, same station, to Let George Do It. This is the Mutual Don Lee Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. Well, a lot of twists there. There was one thing I just did not get, even by the end of the episode, and that is that the guy who hired George has apparently had quite a bit of money. So why was he getting into the blackmail thing? I know that there are some rich folks who will, have still got kind of a nature to take advantage of a situation like this, but it seems a whole lot of trouble to go to. It was interesting to have him actually offer George a check. It's not often discussed on the radio, but I sometimes wonder about the timing of him getting paid. Some of the other detective shows are more explicit about this, but given the number of clients he has that die or end up going to prison or the gas chamber, it seemed appropriate to have a cash-in-advance policy to make sure you get paid, particularly with a client like this one. All right, one final note before we sign off. I use a stat tracker that tracks where all of the hits to the great detectives of old-time radio come from. And I saw somebody came over to our podcast site from the BlackBerry, from a BlackBerry forum, talking about the new BlackBerry podcast app, and we were listed by someone there as one of their favorite podcasts. So thanks for that, and thanks to anybody who's sharing the show with friends and family who you think might enjoy it. Appreciate that support. We recommend things, mention things like hitting the like button on Facebook, but I appreciate all the support we get. So thank you so much. Before we do get started, I do want to let you know about Netflix. Well, my next mystery that I'll get from Netflix will be the 11th Rathbone Bruce Sherlock Holmes film. I doubt I would ever readily have the money to buy the whole collection of Rathbone Bruce films. With Netflix, I've been able to see each film one at a time. And there's a whole world of great classic films, classic television, as well as your modern-day favorites with nearly 100,000 titles. There's something there for everybody. So if you haven't tried it, you can try it out free for 2 weeks. Go to netflix.greatdetectives.net. Now we're going to get into today's episode of Sherlock Holmes, The Waltz of Death.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson as he tells you another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. And as for me, well, I'm going to tell you about a swell idea. The idea of serving Petri California sherry before dinner. Tomorrow night, just before dinner, instead of that last-minute rush, take it easy. Pour yourself a glass of Petri sherry. Now, if you'll do that just once, I wouldn't have to say another word about Petri sherry. You'd be a customer for life. Because Petri sherry is good wine with a capital good. Judge that Petri sherry any way you like. By its beautiful amber color, its heart of the grape aroma, or by the best test of all, its flavor. Petri sherry is delicious. And you have a choice of two kinds, Petri regular and Petri pale dry sherry. If you're not sure which you'll like better, try them both Don't buy one, buy two. But remember, always buy Petri. And now I'm sure our good friend Dr. Watson's expecting us. Let's go in and join him. Good evening, Dr. Watson.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell.
All set for tonight's story?
Yes, my boy, I'm all set. It began in Vienna in 1889. The old Vienna of bright lights, lovely ladies, and lilting music.
What were you and the great Sherlock Holmes doing there, Doctor?
Mr. Bartell, what were we doing there?
Yes, sir. Were you just taking a trip?
Oh, in those early days of our association, we didn't have either the time or the money for trips. No, we were in Vienna at the express command of the Emperor Franz Joseph. It was in October, I remember, that we arrived in the city, and for several days we were forced to cool our heels awaiting the imperial pleasure. And on one of those idle evenings, at the good services of our friend the Chief of Police, Count Frano, secured us an invitation to a resplendent ball that was being held at the palace of Princess Stephanie von Kram. It was an incredibly colorful spectacle, Mr. Bartell. A string orchestra high in the gallery of the palace ballroom played a haunting Strauss waltz, while on the floor below, the cream of Viennese aristocracy swayed and glided gaily to the lilting music. I can remember the picture so well, Mr. Bartell, that Holmes and I stood there talking to the Chief of Police, Count Frano.
A colorful scene, is it not, gentlemen?
By George, yes, Count Frano. It must be a real holiday for you and Mr. Holmes.
What makes you say that, Watson?
Well, it's hard to think of the criminal world when one looks at such a gathering.
And yet Count Frano knows as well as I do that the criminal is not confined to class or environment.
Indeed, no, Mr. Holmes. I can assure you that every guest here tonight has been scrutinized as he entered.
Yes, I imagine that many plainclothes men are present in this room now, aren't they, Count Frano?
Oh, yes. We take no chances.
I suppose you can't afford to. There's enough jewelry being worn here tonight for a king's ransom, I should say.
The waltz is finished. Now I can present you to our hostess, Princess von Kram. Stephanie, my pigeon.
My pigeon must know the princess pretty well.
Yes, I'm glad to see that in Vienna the profession of criminal detection carries no social stigma.
Allow me to present you Mr. Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson, the Princess Stephanie von Kram.
I'm very honored to meet you, Your Highness.
I'm most happy to meet you, gentlemen. Permit me to introduce my protege, János Horváth, the Hungarian composer.
And you do, sir. This ball tonight, Mr. Holmes, will mark a rare occasion. A signal honor is to be conferred on Herr Horváth and myself before tonight is through. The next waltz is a new composition of his. Tonight will be its debut.
Indeed, how very interesting.
It is a great honor the princess has conferred on me. A new composition could not possibly be presented under more auspicious circumstances.
Count Frano, you spoke of an honor in connection with yourself.
Yeah, tell them our secret, Stephanie.
No, I will tell them myself, Anatole. After your waltz has been played, János, and Anatole and I shall be the first to have the privilege of dancing to it, my father is to make a public announcement. He is to announce my engagement to Count Anatole Rudafano.
Oh, indeed, my congratulations to you both. Very lucky fellow.
Am I not the luckiest of men? Is she not exquisite? I, the gay man of Vienna, the cavalier who swore that no one woman would ever capture him. I confess it, gentlemen, I'm in love. Oh, but I pity you. Even the great waltzes of old Vienna could hardly be worthy of this moment.
Oh, Anatole, you are a born flatterer. Oh, come, the waltz is about to begin. I shall see you gentlemen later.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. The orchestra is tuning up, Herr Horváth. I imagine this is a great moment for you.
A very frightening one, I assure you, my friend. In a few minutes I shall know whether my new work is to be crowned with success or failure.
Count Frano is leading the princess to the center of the floor. The conductor is raising his battle.
This is your moment, Herr Horváth. Good luck.
Pray for me, gentlemen. Pray for me.
There they go, the princess and Count Frano. They're starting the waltz.
Ah, they make a striking pair, don't they?
Here come the other couples out on the floor. Charming. Quite charming. It reminds me of... Great Scott, that was a revolver shot.
It's the princess. She's been shot. Come on, Watson. Out of the way, please. Out of the way.
Conforfano, what happened? Stephanie, Dr. Watson, see what you can do for her.
Count Frano, there's nothing I can do, I'm afraid. She was shot through the brain. She died instantly.
Stephanie is dead. Stop that devilish music! Lock all the doors! There's a murderer to be found!
Count Profano, have you found any clues?
One of my men found a revolver. It had been tossed into the earth of a potted palm.
May I see it, please?
Of course. Here.
Rammed into the soft earth. Confound it. Count Profano, your fiancée was an extremely beautiful woman. You must have had rivals?
Yes, several, but none of them are present tonight.
Who will inherit her estate?
A 6-month-old nephew.
Who's his guardian?
The Emperor Franz Joseph himself. No, Mr. Holmes. I know of no obvious motive for someone wishing poor Stephanie dead.
Well, perhaps it was a political crime. She was a wealthy aristocrat and a very prominent one.
Yes, it's very possible. Many nihilist assassins have been active in my country recently.
Meanwhile, we have a ballroom full of suspects waiting for us.
So I was just going to suggest we went back there. We can't find out very much by staying here in the library.
It's a delicate matter. Almost everyone present tonight is known to me personally.
May I suggest that you go back to the ballroom and have the male guests file past you? Detain for questioning anyone whose evening clothes do not fit perfectly.
What's the cut of a man's clothes got to do with this?
Anyone invited to such a ball as this would naturally have his own tailor. I think, Count Profano, if you found a man who had to hire his costume, he might be an impostor and may well prove to be your assassin.
Mr. Holmes, your plan has not been effective so far. We find one Englishman who is unusually badly dressed, and what do we discover? He's an English milord whose luggage was lost on the plane.
Yes, and the second suspect proved to be a perfectly respectable Viennese doctor whose nasty little child had taken a last-minute snip at his tailcoat with a pair of scissors.
And the third was poor Horvath, the composer, who cannot yet afford a good dress suit, eh? Well, Count Profano, why not have the next suspect shown in?
Yes, of course. Over! Bring in the next man.
Ja, Herr Franz. Kommen Sie herein, bitte.
Ein, bitte. What a frightful-looking fellow.
Your name, please.
My name is Gruning. What do you wish with me?
Gruning? Your name was not on the list of invitations.
One moment, please. Let me see your right hand, Herr Gruning.
You have no right to touch me.
Where did you get these fresh earth stains? Your right thumb is pitted and the nail is full of dirt.
What does that prove, policeman?
Not a short while ago, you tried to hide your revolver by ramming it into an earth-filled flower pot. Give me that revolver, please, Count Profano. It will be easy to compare the samples of earth.
It will not be necessary.
Well, you admit that you murdered the princess tonight, then?
Certainly, I admit it.
Why did you kill her?
She was an aristocrat. She was an oppressor of the poor. I'm glad I killed her. One day, I and my party will kill all of you filthy aristocrats.
Count Profano, put down that revolver.
Shoot him like the dark he is.
No, Count Profano. Even you can't take the law into your own hands.
Why do you not shoot me? I'm not afraid to die.
Have him taken away, Schober.
Nehmt den Hund ins Gefängnis.
Thank you for stopping my hand just now, Doctor. But when he spoke of Stephanie that way, I could have killed him just as he killed her.
A very understandable impulse, sir, but one that would have ruined your life.
My life? Now that she is dead, my life is empty. What right do love and beauty have to exist in a world that no longer holds Stephanie? She was all light and life, loveliness. And now... But I am hardly displaying my Viennese blood, am I? The murder is caught, thanks to you, Mr. Holmes, and my life, such as it is, must go on. Somehow.
That's how the story began, Mr. Bartell.
Began? It sounds like the end of a story to me, Doctor.
Far from it, my boy. The next day, Holmes and I had our interview with His Imperial Majesty and learned the nature of the services expected of us. Services that required our leaving the city. And that's why, my boy, we were gone from Vienna for some weeks. We didn't know that during our absence, Herr Holbert's Waltz, which had had such a tragic debut, was beginning to make a sort of morbid history.
The Horvath Waltz. We have had many requests for it.
Gladly, we will play it, Herr Baron.
Isn't that the Horvath Waltz they are playing?
Yes, my dear, and see who is walking on to the floor to dance to it. Leah Mollenstein, the actress. A beautiful creature.
Are you trying to make me jealous, Hans?
Gott in Himmel, it's Leah Mollenstein. She's been shot.
A new ballet, and to the music of the Horvath Waltz.
Magnificent. Never has Krasnova danced better.
Have you ever seen such exquisite pirouettes?
Deaths in 4 weeks, Schober. All beautiful women and all killed to the music of the Horvath Waltz. There's a homicidal madman at large in Vienna. There's only one thing to be done. We must forbid absolutely the playing of that waltz by imperial decree.
Yeah, all of this, Mr. Bartell, until we return to Vienna.
And then, I suppose, Sherlock Holmes was drawn into the case again, Doctor.
Yes, my boy. Holmes immediately made a close study of the newspaper reports on the tragedies. And it was with great difficulty that I tore him away from his investigations to attend the reception at which the Emperor was to thank us for our services on the mission that we just completed. As we arrived at the Imperial Palace, almost the first person we ran into was the Hungarian composer, Janusz.
Dr. Watson, you have heard of the tragedies connected with my waltz?
Yes, we have indeed.
I was making a close study of the newspaper reports on them just before I came here.
You must do something, Mr. Holmes. People will hardly listen to other music. They want my waltz. But that is forbidden. I'm losing a reputation and a fortune while that waltz remains unplayed.
Or perhaps, Herr Horvath, you are laying an excellent foundation for a later reputation and fortune.
What do you mean?
All this publicity, however distasteful to you at the moment, must in the long run prove invaluable. There you are, my dear Count Rufano.
Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, I'm glad to see you back in Vienna. You've heard of the murders?
Yes, Count, we were just discussing them.
I need your help again, my good friend. For over a month now, the murder has been at large, and I cannot seem to get on the trail.
Well, I'm Gruning, the first killer. What have you done with him?
Released him.
What? Released him? Great Scott, why?
At the hearing, it was obvious the man was an egomaniac. He boasted of the murder of Stephanie, apparently out of pure vanity. The liberal newspaper editors made quite an issue of the case. They brought pressure to bear, and we had to let him go.
Confound it. I wish I hadn't left Vienna.
Well, if the fellow's at large again, Count Rufano, it's pretty obvious that he's the murderer of the other women, too.
On the contrary, Doctor, he was in prison until yesterday. The last of the murders was committed 3 days ago. Oh, here comes His Imperial Highness Franz Joseph.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Your Highness. Good evening.
Well, I see we have very distinguished company tonight. Not only the masterful Sherlock Holmes and his colleague, Dr. Watson, our English friends that we are honoring, but I see that we have a distinguished representative from our Hungarian Empire, Janusz Horvath. It was a success, I'm told, as a breed of composers for whom Vienna is famous.
Your Imperial Highness is most kind.
There's a pipe organ in here. It's in excellent condition, I am told. Will you not play as one of your compositions, Herr Horvath?
I shall be most honored, Your Highness.
Sit down, gentlemen, sit down.
Thank you.
What shall I play, Your Imperial Highness?
Anything you wish, young man. Anything you wish.
Thank you, Your Highness. With your permission, I choose to play...
Great heavens! He's playing the death waltz.
On your guard, Watson. Even in the Imperial Palace itself, this twirling tune may invoke murder.
You'll hear the rest of Dr. Watson's story in just a second, which just gives me time to remind you that if any one wine could be called the perfect wine for almost any occasion, that one wine would be Petri California Sherry. Petri sherry is not only a fine before-dinner wine, but it's wonderful after dinner, too. And, of course, when you're entertaining or when guests drop in, whether in the afternoon or evening, there's nothing better than a glass of Petri sherry. And it's comforting to know that you can serve Petri sherry proudly, because the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. Dr. Watson, you certainly left me hanging on a cliff that time. You broke off your story just as the Hungarian composer started to play his ill-fated waltz to the Emperor Franz Joseph. What happened?
At the time, my boy, fortunately, nothing happened. Herr Howard completed his composition without apparent incident, and shortly afterwards we attended a banquet that was given in our honor. A banquet that concluded with a rather curious ceremony in which the Emperor presented Sherlock Holmes with a medal to commemorate his services. Everything was... never mind about that. Finally, it was shortly after 10 o'clock, I remember. Holmes and I, together with Count Refrano, left the royal chambers and started to descend the spiral staircase leading to the main hall.
You were greatly honored tonight, Mr. Holmes. I've only known His Imperial Highness to make 3 such presentations before, and they were all to my own countrymen.
He might have made another while he was about
Please,
it.
Watson, please. The Emperor was most kind. I can't help feeling that he over-evaluated my services.
You're being unusually modest, Holmes.
Perhaps because I feel that my visit here is incomplete until I've solved the Death Waltz murders.
I hope you'll be able to stay in Vienna long enough to do that. I confess I am at my wit's end.
I've been giving the matter a great deal of thought, Count Refrano. I have a plan for trapping the killer. It's in rather an embryonic stage at the moment, but over a few pipes at the hotel tonight, I expect to develop it thoroughly. I shall call at your office in the morning and explain it to you.
I shall be awaiting your visit eagerly. One more of these murders and the newspaper outcry might become so loud that I should have to resign my post as chief of police.
When Hobart made that daring gesture and played the death waltz tonight, it proved one thing. It's not infallible. The death of a beautiful woman doesn't always follow the playing of the melody.
Very true, Doctor, but...
Watson.
Yes, sir?
Strike a match, will you?
Huh?
There's a figure here slumped on the landing.
It's got it. Body of a girl.
And a very beautiful girl, too.
Shot through the forehead. You were wrong, Watson. The death waltz is infallible, but I swear to you that the killer has struck for the last time. Ah, there you are, my dear Count Refrano.
Yes, I followed the instructions you gave me this morning, Mr. Holmes. Schenbaum's is at the moment the smartest restaurant in Vienna. I've reserved the best table for you, and I've invited the guests that you named.
A strangely assorted couple, I must say. Janos Horvath, composer, and that grinning fellow, the one that admitted shooting your fiancée, Count Refrano.
It's as much as I could do to keep my hands off him when he arrived here, Doctor. But Mr. Holmes insisted that I ask you. Just the same, I wish you would tell me his plan. I'm completely in the dark.
Completely in the dark. I can sympathize with you, Count Refrano. Holmes never tells me a thing either.
Let's turn our guest, shall we? In a very few minutes, I'm sure that my plan will be perfectly apparent. Good evening, Herr Horvath.
Oh, good evening, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Herr Holmes?
And how are you tonight, Herr Gröning?
Angry at having to come here against my will. My party does not approve of these aristocratic, padded pigsties. But Count Refrano informed me that if I did not come here tonight, I could expect to find myself back in prison. How could I resist such a persuasive invitation?
Ah, here comes the third guest for our table. I met her at the hotel a few hours ago. Miss Banks, I'm so glad that you were able to come.
Hello, Mr. Holmes. I didn't know this was going to be a party, but I couldn't be happier.
Allow me to present you, Count Refrano, Dr. Watson, Herr Horvath, Herr Gröning, Miss Barbara Banks from the United States of America.
How do you do? Holmes, I wish I knew what you're up to.
And how can a young American girl afford to come to Vienna, may I ask?
Of course you can ask. My father made a lot of money, and he wanted me to have the advantages he never had.
Your father made money because he ground the faces of the poor.
Oh, my father never ground a poor face in his life.
He was a capitalist. I spit on him.
Oh, that's rather unfriendly. And also, geographically speaking, something of a problem. You see, he's living in Wyoming.
You make fun of me?
Only because you made fun of me. Mr. Holmes, I did as you asked me.
I'm very grateful, Miss Banks.
The orchestra leader didn't want to play it. He seemed scared. But I waved a lot of money in front of him, And I promise to pay the fine as well.
Splendid.
Great Scott, I see it all now.
So do I. You persuaded Miss Banks to bribe the Ox to lead her to play.
My waltz. My forbidden waltz?
Yes, Herr Horvath. I thought that if the request came from a young American, it might seem quite reasonable.
Particularly if the request were accompanied by American dollars ground out of the faces of the poor.
You are being unpleasant to me, aren't you?
They're playing at your waltz, however. The death waltz.
Mr. Holmes, this is against the law. The Horvath waltz is forbidden by imperial decree.
True, nonetheless, my dear Count, I implore you not to arrest the orchestra leader until after the waltz is completed.
In which case, since I requested it and it's still playing, I'd like a partner. Will you dance with me, Count Refrano?
I'm sorry, Miss Banks, but with this melody I shall never dance again.
Oh. Well, how about you, Dr. Watson?
Oh, I like you very much, my dear, but I'm afraid I'm not as light on my feet as I used to be. In any case, I was never much of a hand at the waltz. The polka's more in my line.
Dear me, I'm getting an inferiority complex.
Oh, please do not, Miss Banks. You'll observe that the general public seems singularly unwilling to dance, too. Not one couple has ventured onto the floor.
How can you blame them? The waltz with Horvath may mean death. How can you blame them?
I'm not afraid. After all, Herr Horvath, it's your own music. I'll dance with you.
You're most kind, Miss Banks, and courageous. But to be a partner of the only woman on the floor would mean ruin. An admission of failure.
My third refusal. I'm a wallflower.
No, my dear Miss Banks, the aristocrats, they're afraid. But I, plain, simple Gröning, I will dance with you, Miss Millions.
Oh, bless you, Herr Gröning. And I assure you my father does not grind the faces of the poor.
He does grind the faces of the poor, this I know.
Stop her, it's suicide.
I think not, Herr Horvath.
I think so. And I'll not stay here to watch it.
Where the devil's he off to?
Do not worry, Doctor. I shall keep an eye on him.
Yes, and we'll keep an eye on both of them. Come on, Watson.
Horvath is leaving the room.
Whereas Count Refrano has deserted his trail and has slipped behind one of those pillars.
Good Lord, he's drawing a revolver.
Exactly, Watson. He's our man. Put down that revolver, Count Refrano. Put it down, I say.
He's turning it on himself. Count Refrano! I still can't believe it, Holmes. Not the fact that Count Refrano blew his brains out, but the fact that he was a murderer.
Yes, I was slow to believe it too, old chap, and I blame myself in consequence. Two things should have been instantly apparent about the madman who killed beautiful women when he heard the Horvath waltz. Firstly, he must have had some motivation which drove him to such an act.
Secondly, he must have carried a revolver with him at all times, since he was invariably armed when the occasion presented itself.
Exactly, and that factor made me think of the police official. Then, of course, I saw Refrano's motivation. He loved the Princess Stephanie dearly. Her death in his arms was a psychological shock that was more than his mentality could stand.
And when he heard that music, it reminded him of the dead princess. It forced him to kill.
That's right, old fellow. You will recall that what he said to us after his fiancée's death. What right do love and beauty have to exist in a world that no longer holds Stephanie? When he heard the music, he couldn't bear to think that other loveliness existed, and so, well, he destroyed it.
But who killed the Princess Stephanie?
The man who was first arrested for it, Herr Gröning. He admitted it after a little persuasion when the police arrived. Taken back to prison in the carriage that just took Count Refrano's body.
It's shocking to think that 7 innocent women have been murdered before this case is solved.
Yes, a fact that will be a constant reproach to me, I assure you.
Oh, I didn't mean that, my dear fellow. We weren't even in Vienna when 5 of the killings took place.
Hello. Here comes Miss Banks.
Mr. Holmes, what happened to that funny little man who danced with me?
Herr Gröning? Mm-hmm. He went to prison, Miss Banks. He was a murderer.
Well, I must say this is a strange kind of a party you asked me to, Mr. Holmes. One of the guests blows his brains out, and the other, the only man who danced with me, turns out to be a murderer. Oh, I see now why Father sent me to Europe. An evening like this could never happen in Wyoming.
Look. Helmut's walking out in front of the orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Listen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I, Almost Horvath, wish to assure you, upon the word of the great English detective Sherlock Holmes, that never again shall my new waltz be an accompaniment for murder. Henceforth, its melody will be for life and love and laughter. I have ordered a bottle of the finest Tokay sent to each of your tables. Raise your glasses and pledge me as I now conduct my waltz. Free at last from the kiss of death.
say, Doctor, I really like that story. That was a baffler.
Yes, wasn't it? A highly placed police official is the last person in the world you'd think guilty of murder. I must confess I wasn't of so much help to Holmes in solving that case.
Oh, don't let that worry you, Doctor. After all, Holmes almost missed solving it himself.
Oh, thank you, my boy. Thank you. But it certainly was one of the most interesting cases that I was ever connected with.
I know what you mean. You know, I came across quite an interesting case myself the other day.
Oh, you don't say where?
Right in my own house.
Oh, that's interesting. What kind of case?
Sherry.
Oh, for goodness sake.
That's right, a case of Petri, California sherry. You see, I buy it by the case, Doctor, because that Petri wine is really extraordinary. But all Petri wine is unusual wine, unusually good, because the Petri family has been making wine for generations. Because this is so, and because the Petri business has been owned and operated by the Petri family ever since its beginning, and is today the largest independent family-owned wine company in America, naturally the name Petri on a bottle of wine is more than a trademark. It's the personal assurance of the Petri family that every drop of wine in that bottle is good wine. Naturally good wine because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure was written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's story, The Adventure of the Illustrious Client. Music is by Dean Fostler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family. This is the world's largest network, the Mutual Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. How do you know you've got a really great, engaging detective series when you guess the murderer pretty early, and it's still an entertaining show, just a fascinating plot, somewhat reminiscent of an episode of Suspense. Just a fantastic setup and a great plot, and it almost had the feel of a genuine Sherlock Holmes, one from the canon. So, great work here by Green and Boucher. I should mention, we're getting to the end of our Rathbone Bruce Sherlock Holmes. We've only got 4 more weeks, and then we'll be over to Tom Conway. All right, before we go today, we do have a new review over on iTunes. A comment from Tim, who writes, "Love this podcast. Adam adds insightful comments to both the beginning and the end. He chooses the best series from the old-time radio and does top-notch research for each episode." Well, thanks a lot, Tim. Reminder to those of you who have the app and our premium site, we have our third of 4 Cavalcade of America episodes with Basil Rathbone. Be sure to check that out. Well, before we get into today's episode of Johnny Dollar, I do want to let you know about Johnny Dollar Air, which is through Priceline.com. Using Johnny Dollar Air, you can either name your own price on hotels, rental cars, airline tickets, or go from published fares. To help support the great detectives of old-time radio, remember, JohnnyDollarAir.com first when you're making travel plans. All right, well, we're going to get into today's episode of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, the Virginia Beach Matter.
The Hallmark Playhouse, which is heard during most of the year at this time on Thursdays, has finished its summer vacation. So be with us when Hallmark Playhouse returns to CBS a week from tonight on September the 7th. Now, from Hollywood, it's time for Edmund O'Brien as...
Johnny Dollar.
Carl Brewster down at East Coast.
Yes, Carl.
I wonder if you'd do a little job for us.
Sure, what is it?
A policyholder of ours needs some protection.
Well, I hope this doesn't indicate a trend. This is the second time an insurance company has hired me as a bodyguard. Isn't that rather unusual?
Well, it's rather an unusual case. This girl, her fiancé, has spent the past 5 years in prison. He's being released tomorrow, and he swears that the first thing he's going to do is kill her.
Well, that's cozy.
I think she deserves some help. Come on down this afternoon and we'll talk it over.
Edmund O'Brien in a transcribed adventure of the man with the action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Home Office, East Coast Underwriters, Hartford, Connecticut. Attention, Carl Brewster. The following is an accounting of my expenditures during assignment on the Virginia Beach matter. Expense account item 1, $1.50 cab fare from my apartment to your office.
Well, you're prompt, Dollar.
How are you, Mr. Brewster?
Or did we set any particular time? No, I guess we didn't. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm glad to see you anyway. Sit down.
Thank you.
Now, let's see. Oh, yes, the Browning girl, Janice Browning. How much did I tell you over the phone?
That her boyfriend was getting out of stir and was going to kill her. What you left unsaid was that she probably deserves it.
What's that?
I don't hold much sympathy for these dames that get themselves involved with some hoodlum and then decide to get disinvolved the minute the going gets rough. But it's your money.
I wouldn't jump to conclusions, Dollar. This is a pathetic case. Of course, the girl made a mistake in taking up with this fellow, but 5 years is a long time to think. And she realized her mistake.
What did he go up for?
I believe it was robbery.
Do you know if she spent all the loot before she realized her mistake?
Now, Dollar.
Why doesn't she hire a bodyguard herself?
Because she can't afford it. She has nothing. She turned to us because there was no place to go. Poor thing is in desperate fear of her life, Dollar. Surely you can appreciate that.
Okay, give me the rest.
There's a little more. She's living in Virginia, outside of Norfolk, Virginia Beach.
Janice Browning, was it?
Uh-huh. I have her address for you. Her fiancé's name is Robeson, Mark Robeson.
And he's due out tomorrow.
From the state penitentiary at Richmond. Just stay with her until we see what happens. She was here, Dollar. I talked to her. This will not be an unpleasant assignment for you.
She must have something more than a policy to knock this whole company off its feet far enough to hire a bodyguard. That could spell bankruptcy if it went far enough. Expense account item 2, $110, transportation and incidentals between Hartford and Virginia Beach, Virginia. Virginia Beach seemed hardly the scene for potential murder. A white strip of sunny beach on one hand and a friendly forest of pine on the other. I found Janice Browning's address just south of the village proper. A fair-sized cottage surrounded first by a small, well-kept garden and then undeveloped land. When I got out of the cab, I was looked over by a trim little honey blonde thing in shorts and halter who waited for me on the veranda.
Hello.
Hello.
You seem to be carrying a suitcase. Are you sure you haven't been misdirected?
Are you Miss Janice Browning?
No, I am her personal maid. Who are you?
My name is Dollar. I'm the investigator from the insurance company. Did you say personal maid?
Yeah. Did you say investigator?
That's right.
Well, I hope you'll pardon me if I'm confused. I was not notified of the arrival of no investigator. What is it you want?
Miss Browning asked for me. She went to her insurance company and requested a bodyguard.
A bodyguard? Well, I don't know about that. But then there are lots of things I don't know as yet. I'm new here. But if she asked for you, you may as well come in.
Thanks.
I suppose you were surprised when I said I was Miss Browning's personal maid because of the way I'm dressed, if you'll pardon the expression.
As a matter of fact, I was surprised that she had one.
Why'd you say that?
I'd been led to believe that she couldn't afford things like that.
Well, between you and I haven't been paid yet. But she seems to be very generous. She turned over her entire wardrobe for me to wear at any time. Yeah, but maybe that's a bad sign. Maybe she's going to pay me off in clothes. And they don't quite fit, as you can see.
How long have you been here?
Just only 3 days. My name's Betty Light. I took the name Light from my stepfather. What are you doing here?
Well, Miss Browning has a fiancé coming out of prison today, and she's afraid to meet him alone.
Prison? Well, you could never tell. But I suppose it's her business.
What is it?
Well, if I was sweating out a fiancé after all that time, I wouldn't be quite so thick with what she's thick with.
What do you mean?
Well, if I were him, I'd feel cheated. She hasn't been wasting her time, from what I can tell. And in 1 week, that's plenty. But I shouldn't be gassing like this.
Who is he?
His name is George Masters. And if there's a fiancé on tap, he'd better be careful. Why are is she afraid, as if she shouldn't be?
Well, because she changed her mind about him and evidently didn't tell him about it.
Sure, the same old story. Well, this is a surprise to me, but the least I can do is work out the wig.
You know, Betty, I feel the same way. It was just past midday when I arrived, and wasn't until almost 5 that a cream-colored convertible coasted into the driveway carrying a man and another honey blonde. I could see immediately how Janice Browning had swept the insurance company off its feet.
How do you do, Mr. Dollar? I'm so glad you're here. Oh, may I present Mr. Masters?
How are you, Mr. Masters?
I won't stay, Jan. I know you have things to talk over. I'll pick you up at 7.
All right, George.
Bye, Dollar. Feel a lot better, too, now that you're here.
I'll do what I can.
See you at 7, Jan.
I'll be ready. Oh, please sit down, Mr. Dollar. Betty?
Yes, Miss Browning.
I don't think we'll need anything, and I'd like to see Mr. Dollar alone, if you don't mind.
Oh, by all means, Miss Browning. Could I have your permission to visit the beach?
Of course, stay as long as you like. You know where the beach things are.
Oh, I wouldn't think of encroaching. I'll just go the way I am.
She's the strangest girl.
Where'd you find her?
She was a waitress in New York. I asked her if she wanted to come down for the rest of the summer. I thought she'd be company. But she's become so formal, or tries to be. Oh, would you like a drink or something?
No, thanks.
I suppose you think I'm an awful coward to scream for help the way I did.
Well, I haven't heard all the particulars.
I really didn't know what else to do. I thought of running away, but, well, I've made friends here. There's the simple fact that I don't have any money.
How serious do you think this threat to kill you is?
I'm afraid it's quite serious. But I don't know what will happen, and I wanted somebody to be with me.
When did you see him last?
6 months ago. I thought about it for a long time, about our breaking our engagement and which would be the best way to do it, and I decided to face him while he was still in prison and simply tell him I couldn't go on.
Well, that wasn't the easiest way to hand it to him.
I know, but it was the fairest, I thought. He didn't create a scene or anything, but I'll never forget his expression. He just looked at me and said, "Have your fun. You've only got 6 months, because when I get out of here, I'm going to kill you." Well, now the 6 months are up. He's been let out.
He knows you're here?
Yes, he'll come here.
Your friend Masters said he was going to call for you at 7. Where were you going?
Just to dinner and maybe a club afterward.
I think you'd better cancel it.
Why? I'll go crazy if I have to sit in this house and just wait.
I don't want you to come back here after dark, for one reason. If you can't go a long distance and stay, I don't want you to leave at all. The village is too small. If he knows it, he'll find you.
I'll be with George.
Look, you managed to put the responsibility of this thing into the lap of your insurance company, and they handed it to me. Now, I want you to stay here where I can keep my eye on you.
All right, Mr. Dollar. I'll do anything you want me to.
Good. Oh, you might mix that drink you offered. Scotch, if you have it, and plain water. The rest of the evening was spent with small talk and mounting tension. The state penitentiary was no more than 100 miles from Virginia Beach, and since it's the habit of prisons to turn out their guests at dawn, Mark Robeson had had plenty of time to make the trip. In spite of a sultry night, I closed and locked all the doors and windows, and by 11, the cottage was dark, with everyone retired. The living room was the most strategic spot in the house, so I stretched myself across a couch that was too short for me and listened to the silence. It must have been some time after midnight when I heard a door crack behind me. Who's that?
It's I, Mr. Dollar.
Oh, you shouldn't be roaming around the house, Betty. I darn near laid a chair across your head.
Oh, it was too hot to sleep, and besides, I have a few things on my mind if you're interested.
Sure, sit down.
Oh, thanks. Did I not understand you to say that this Con was her fiancé?
That's right.
Well, she certainly lives in circles, if you ask me. I happen to uncover some information that will knock you for a loop.
What?
Well, basically, I've never been a snoop, but I didn't go to the beach.
Oh?
No, after you advised me of the situation around here, I felt I had it right. I went into her room, which is no more than an oversized closet with bath. And it's a good thing I did, because in a drawer, I found a picture of Miss Browning posing as a bride.
A bride?
Yeah.
Are you sure of that?
As sure as I'm sitting here. And the guy standing with her was a bridegroom if I ever saw one. Were they fancy? What do you think of that?
I don't know. It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
But from what I've overheard, this fiancé of hers has been in prison for 5 years.
Yeah, that's the story.
Then how come her wedding picture was taken in 1947?
Was it?
And that's what's stamped on the back of it. Now, is that screwy or isn't it?
It definitely is.
And there are some other things that don't ring truly. For example, this mug she is currently tied to. I heard her when she called him tonight, and it sounded more like...
He blasted your room. Get down on the floor. Stay there. Hey, hold it! Hold it, Rhodes! He hadn't moved away from the window he fired through. When I got to him, he was still pointing the now empty gun at me, pulling the trigger and looking down at it stupidly.
Get away. I won't go back. I don't have to stay in the hospital now. I'm all better now.
Give me the gun, Robeson. It's empty.
No. It's mine. You're one of her men. She always had men.
No, I'm not one of her men. Let's go in the house and calm down.
You talk like a doctor. Yeah, you're a doctor. You can't take me back. Get away from me. You told me to make myself believe that she was dead and I'd sleep better.
Come on, Robeson.
Get away. I won't go back. Let go.
Don't cause any more trouble, Robeson. Now,
Come on. I won't go back. Let go, Ropes. No. Now I don't have to go back. Let go.
I'd heard stories of the unbelievable physical strength of those whose mental strength is gone. I got his hands away from my throat by sinking my knee into his stomach. There was nothing I could do to hold him. He lumbered off into the darkness and disappeared. I didn't need a medical opinion to know that I wasn't protecting Janice Browning from a released convict. I was protecting her from a homicidal maniac.
There's the opportunity of a lifetime waiting today for any healthy young American man. An opportunity to begin a profitable and stable career for himself and at the same time to offer assistance to his nation, to the United Nations in their present conflict against armed aggression. The United States Armed Forces need volunteers today in every branch of the service. You have the chance to choose not only the branch, but the type of work which you feel will be of the most benefit to you in the years ahead. May we suggest that you go to your nearest recruiting office now to see if you are eligible to volunteer and inquire about the many opportunities open to you. And now, back to our star, Edmund O'Brien, and the second act of Yours Truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yeah. Turn on some lamps in here, but stay away from the windows. I doubt if he'll come back, but he might.
That brute is still on the loose?
Yeah. Where's Miss Browning?
She's still in her room. I heard her bawling, but she stopped now.
Miss Browning?
Yes?
I'm coming in.
Where is he?
I couldn't hold him. Where's the light switch?
No, don't turn on the lights.
He thinks he killed you. He won't come back tonight.
Well, why don't you go ahead and say it?
Oh, I'd better not. As a matter of fact, I don't mind your lies or the way I was dragged into this. But what really stinks is you're hiring that girl because she looks enough like you to be mistaken for you at a distance. You give her your clothes to wear and you put her into your room. Well, she'd be dead now if she hadn't come into the living room.
I'm not trying to pass the blame, but it was George Masters' idea. He remembered her and thought bringing her here might be a way to save my life.
Robeson's your husband, isn't he?
Yes, he's my husband.
Well, what's he doing running around loose?
He escaped from a hospital in Pennsylvania. He's been there a year. He tried to kill me before he was committed.
Why didn't you tell the insurance company the truth?
I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. It was Mr. Brewster's idea to tell you that he was coming out of prison. He thought you wouldn't take the job if you knew the truth.
Well, he was right, and I'm leaving the job right now.
Oh, you have every right to.
You can get yourself some protection around here.
I couldn't when I tried. I went to every private detective in Norfolk and Portsmouth.
None of them would take the case?
No.
Well, what about the police? What is this, county out here?
Yes, it is. I notified the sheriff's office, and they promised me extra patrols, but that's the best they could do.
How'd you happen to turn to the insurance company?
Well, George Masters is my lawyer. He suggested it. Mr. Dollar, I'm not begging for help or excusing anything I've done, but I've been half crazy with fear and the awful lost feeling when nobody would help me. I had to do something.
What about your lack of money? Was that a lie, too?
Oh, every penny I had has been spent on treatment for Mark. I borrowed from George on my insurance. I sold our house in Connecticut, and that money's gone. This property is all I have left, and I borrowed against it.
I guess you've had your troubles. Who can I talk to about your husband?
You mean a doctor?
Yes, I thought maybe a doctor might know what Robeson would do next.
Well, Dr. Becker came on to Norfolk after he warned me that Mark had escaped. His phone number is in the little book on the stand.
Well, I hate to bother him, but I'd like to have him come out tonight.
Mr. Dollar,
Yeah?
you're staying?
Well, not any longer than I have to. Say, you'd better get up and have a drink. You're shaking like a leaf. I changed my mind about dropping the case, Mr. Brewster, not only because she was a beautiful woman in a tough situation, but also for another reason. I awoke Dr. Becker at his hotel in Norfolk, and after I outlined the night's events to him, he agreed to come out.
It must have been a decidedly unpleasant experience, Mr. Dollar. On the other hand, you are fortunate to be alive.
Yes, I guess I am.
Robeson is only dangerous when his basic jealousy is aggravated. You say you arrived with luggage?
That's right.
Perhaps he was watching then and misunderstood your visit.
Oh, I get it. Well, what do we do now, Doctor? He probably thinks he killed her. Can we expect him to come back?
Well, that is hard to say. He'll suffer a deep sense of remorse. Then he may feel that what took place was only a figment, a dream. The remorse would cause introspection and keep him away. The fantasy thought might bring him back to investigate.
When?
Oh, who knows? Tonight even, or tomorrow.
Would he try to kill her again?
Oh, yes. An extremely strong fixation. Do you want him to come back?
Well, I want to see the end of this. That's the best way I can think of. I'll keep his wife here tomorrow outside so he can see her if he does come.
She's the one who really has suffered, the poor girl. I wish there were a way to ensure her safety.
We could alert the police.
Well, with the police on the scene, then he would not return.
Shh. Here she comes.
Hello, Dr. Becker.
Oh, good evening, my dear. Or morning, rather. Oh, I'm so sorry about the trouble.
I'm afraid it can't be helped.
I was so sure at one point that he was responding to treatment.
I know you've done your best, Doctor. Mr. Dollar, I may be imagining things, but I'm awfully worried.
It'll be all right.
No, I mean, I tried to phone George, and there's no answer. It's after 2, and he should be at home. Mark knew that George and I have always been friendly.
Would there be any danger to this man, Doctor?
Oh, I hardly think so. All of your husband's aggressive urge was directed toward you, Janice.
Well, could we go and see if everything is all right? I can't help it. I'm worried.
Where does he live?
In the village. It's not far from here. Could we borrow your car, Doctor?
Oh, by all means, my dear. Here are the keys.
You'll come with me, Mr. Dollar?
Oh, I'm not letting you go alone. We'll be back as soon as we can, Doctor.
Oh, this is his house, the white one. Oh, there's his car in the driveway.
There's a light on. Maybe his phone is out of order.
I told him I'd let him know if anything happened. George? George, it's Jan. He doesn't answer. I want to go in.
Let's see. It's unlocked.
George?
The light's coming from a room back there.
Oh, that's his study, where the phone is.
Oh, we can check that then. George Masters was lying face up in the middle of a room that had been pretty well torn up by the struggle. The first thing I noticed were the bruises left on his throat by the hands that had choked him to death. I noticed another thing when I went to the desk to phone the police. There was a gun lying on it, and I would have sworn that it was the same police special Mark Robeson was carrying earlier in the evening. It took Dr. Becker to quiet Janice Browning after I literally dragged her out of the master's house and got her home.
I hope she can rest now, but she's dangerously near to mental collapse herself.
Yes, I can understand that.
Is there anything further that I can do, Mr. Dollar?
Nothing now, Betty. Get some sleep if you can.
Sleep? Who could sleep?
Well, and spend your time packing. You're going back to New York in the morning.
I certainly am. As for me, you can give Virginia Beach back to the engine.
Was Janice in love with Masters, Doctor?
I think so. A great feeling of loyalty, at least. He had helped her so much with monetary loans and so on.
But you said he wouldn't remember the association between Masters and his wife.
Yes, I was convinced that he wouldn't.
There was a police special in Masters' study. I'm positive it was the same one that Robeson used here.
Oh?
I tried to take it away from him. I couldn't. Now, why should he leave it at Masters?
Well, I don't know.
Say, did they know one another before Robeson broke down?
Oh, yes, they were quite friendly. Good heavens, Dollar. What are you driving at?
Janice borrowed from Masters on a life insurance policy. That usually means making the lender a beneficiary. I don't know how much the policy was for, but I'm going to find out.
Well, I dislike having to agree with you, Dollar, but I do. In Robeson's warped mind, Janice was the archenemy. It would have been quite easy for Masters to inflame Robeson to the point where he would kill his own wife.
Oh, Mr. Dollar! Mr. Dollar!
What is it, Betty?
He's back. That man, he came back.
All right, now take it easy. You're all right.
But I saw him. He was looking in the window. The one he shot through.
Doctor, take care of her, will you? I'd better get back to Janice's room. There was no more trouble that night, nor was there any rest. We knew that since Robeson had come back, he realized his mistake, and we knew that he would try to come back again. We agreed that instead of calling for police protection, we would let him return and try to handle him when he did. An hour after daybreak, we felt it safe to relax, and it wasn't until noon that I drove Betty Light into Virginia Beach and put her aboard a bus bound for the comparative safety of New York. Before I started the return trip, I made a swing past George Masters' house, convinced the deputy sheriff in charge that I had a right to poke my nose in, and got myself back into the study.
I suppose it'd be all right if you go in. They took up all the evidence they wanted, I guess.
What was that, Sheriff?
All the things that'd pick up prints. Here you are. What do you want to look at?
Some of his papers. I won't interfere with your work, but I'd like to know how he stood financially.
You think that has something to do with it?
Oh, I don't know. It might.
They dusted all them drawers, so I guess it's all right if you pull them. He's a lawyer, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Said the field's wide open. A lot of people didn't like him.
Oh? I didn't know that.
What's that for?
It's a ledger. Kept his accounts in it.
What'd you find? Janice Brown. Who's that?
Somebody he loaned some money to.
Ooh, I'll say he did. $20,000.
Ah, that's all I wanted, Sheriff. Thanks, and I hope I haven't caused you too much trouble. What I'd found was another link in a chain of circumstantial evidence that would never be used since George Masters was dead. He had loaned Janice Browning the thousands she had spent on treatments for her husband, and it was obvious that there was no chance of her ever being able to pay him back. The last notation revealed the fact that a $5,000 loan had been made on her insurance policy in April. A long-distance call to the company told me that the policy was for $50,000 and that George Masters had become the sole beneficiary the same month, April.
But I see no purpose in telling her, Mr. Dollar, or questioning her.
I don't either, Doctor. I hadn't planned to, but the sheriff's office won't think twice about throwing it at her if it gets out.
If you will allow me the privilege of perjuring a certain amount of expert testimony, I think I could manage to gloss over it.
Well, the deputy saw it, but I don't think it sank in.
I hope not. Of course, we're assuming that we'll be successful in subduing Robeson.
You said he would come back.
I'm sure he will. It is you I'm worried about.
Well, I'll have to be ready for him this time. He's too strong to take without a weapon. I hate to do it.
Oh, I don't think you need to be. The poor fellow will have no idea what is happening except that he has come back.
Okay. She awake?
Yes, I think so.
Well, it's 3 o'clock. She should be outside in case he's watching.
Yes. I'll go and explain our tactics to her. Good luck, Mr. Dollar. I hope all goes well.
It seemed almost cruel baiting the trap, but it had to be done. We paraded Janice Browning through the garden in her most fetching get-up until dark, and then sent her in to sit in front of an open window. I don't know how she held on to her own sanity. I do know that I had a little trouble myself. I sneaked into a position outside the house from which there was a good view of all the approaches but the one from the north. He arrived at about 10:30. He was moving toward the living room window, and I started toward him. Hi, Mark.
What? I can't see it.
I'm George Masters. You remember?
George Masters?
That's right.
It's your fault. She wasn't in that room.
Did I tell you she was in that room?
You aren't George Masters. He made a mistake. I told him, and he said I made a mistake. You're the doctor. Get away from me.
We'll do it right this time, Mark. Come here.
George Masters is dead. You aren't George Masters.
No, I'm not, Mark. But you have to come with me.
No, I don't. I won't go back to the hospital. I won't let you.
Mark!
Robeson, don't! Get away! No, I don't!
I'm sorry, Robeson. I don't know what Becker is going to say to the police, but I do know what he learned from his patient after he was returned to the hospital and quieted down. Enclosed, you will find the doctor's confidential statement.
He did go to Masters, hoping to ally him as a friend. Taking advantage of his escape, Masters armed him in the hope of realizing a profit from Janice's insurance policy. But Robeson, in his agitation, fired into the wrong room. And because he placed the blame for his mistake on Masters instead of himself, he became violent, and as a result, Masters was killed.
Expense account item 3, same as item 2, transportation back to Hartford. Expense account item 4, and this is to you personally, Mr. Brewster. Payment for deceit in acing me into this matter, $500. Expense account total, $855.75. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, stars Edmund O'Brien in the title role and is written by Gil Dowd with music composed and conducted by Leith Stevens. Edmund O'Brien can currently be seen starring in the Columbia Pictures production 711 Ocean Drive. Featured in tonight's cast were Bob Sweeney, Virginia Gregg, Gene Bates, Hy Averback, and Howard McNear. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, was transcribed in Hollywood by Jaime Del Valle.
CBS is the star's address, and when you pay a daytime call, you'll find one of CBS' greatest stars, Arthur Godfrey, on hand to welcome you 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for an hour and a quarter each day. Arthur and all the little Godfreys make life more musical and fun for you. Hear Arthur Godfrey's daytime program every Monday through Friday on most of these same CBS stations.
To hear each and every star, leave your dials where they are, 'cause this is CBS, the star's address. Yes, CBS, the star's address.
Yes, this is CBS, where Philip Marlowe takes the case every Friday night on the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Welcome back. For those who have been long-time listeners of the program, the plot of the show will sound a little bit familiar. It's very similar to one of the last Charles Russell shows we played back in April, Bodyguard to Anne Connolly. However, listening to both stories, there's some pretty significant differences in the plot. This is one thing I do appreciate sometimes with Johnny Dollar. Sometimes when scripts are reused on Johnny Dollar, it'll be the exact same plot as another program. However, this one was refreshing because they took the same plot, a general plot idea, but they turned it in a different direction. It's like listening to Johnny Dollar long enough, you get the alternate endings to a wide variety of stories. And of course, they did change the setting, and yeah, several things about the plot. By the way, at the start of the show, it indicated that Hallmark Playhouse would be returning. What would that mean for Johnny Dollar? It was actually going on a somewhat weird summer vacation, coming very late in summer. This show aired August 31st, 1950. The next episode of Johnny Dollar returned on a new night on September 30th, 1950. So about a 1-month break. And it was an interesting reference to the Hallmark Playhouse, because there is an episode of Hallmark Playhouse with Edmund O'Brien that we may bring to you as an extra one of these days. But that'll do it for this week. Send your comments to me, box13 at greatdetectives.net. Cast your vote for the show on Podcast Alley, podcastalley.greatdetectives.net. Follow us over on Twitter at Radio Detectives. From Boise, Idaho, this is your host, Adam Graham, signing off.